Chapter 1023. Only boasting and not showing some ability. If he messed things up he might lose his life. Xianxia thought to himself as he snickered in his heart. The couple stared at the dazzling green flame in his palm. Their pupils gradually widened then shrunk at the same time. They cried out involuntarily, "Green flame!" They could not help but be excited. Based on their experience, they naturally knew that green flame was an indispensable ingredient in cultivating the true samadhi fire. In other words, the person in front of them was not boasting. Since he could control the green flame, it was indeed possible that he could cure their daughter's injuries. The green flame quickly retracted into his palm. Xianxia raised an index finger to his lips and shushed them. He pointed downstairs and whispered with shifty eyes, "You have to know that if word of this gets out, I'm afraid Jean Tai will be the first to not let me off." The couple nodded in ecstasy. The Snow Emperor even whispered, "We understand. Don't worry, I've checked. They are still in the room downstairs. Bring me to Princess Linglong's injuries first," Xianxia said with a smile. "Please." The couple extended their hands in unison and accompanied him quickly into the room. Once they entered the room, the Snow Emperor immediately cast a soundproof barrier. Xianxia looked around the room. Compared to the guest room downstairs, there was an ice couch, an ice stool and a dressing table. Princess Linglong was still lying on the ice couch with her eyes tightly shut, unconscious. He pointed and asked, "How is she?" The Snow Emperor, who had high hopes for him, explained in detail in a gentle voice. "My wife and I worked together to temporarily suppress the throbbing true samadhi fire in her body. However, it will flare up every day for the next 2 days. Only after suppressing those 2 times will the true samadhi fire lie dormant for a period of time. At that time Linglong will wake up." Xianxia pinched his chin and looked at the unconscious Xue Linglong. He frowned and said, "What method did you use to suppress the true samadhi fire in her body?" This was a question he had asked outside but did not get an answer. This time he brought it up again in hopes of unraveling the secret. After all, the sharpness of the true samadhi fire was known throughout the 3 realms. How could he not be interested in the fact that the 2 could suppress the true samadhi fire? The husband and wife looked at each other and seemed a little hesitant. After a moment of silence, the Snow Empress asked, "Xianxia, why do you want to help us?" Obviously, she was considering whether it was worth it for her to reveal that secret. "I want to make friends with you. You might not believe me if I put it this way, so I'll put it more bluntly." Xianxia looked at the 2 of them and said with a smile, "If one day I need your help, I hope you can help me." The couple nodded slightly. Empress Xue smiled bitterly and said, "Your words are almost exactly the same as what Wang Qing said back then." Xianxia asked in surprise, "Did Wang Qing say that he needed your help?" Seeing the couple nodding again, Xianxia could not help but feel suspicious. A thought flashed through his mind but he did not grasp it. He thought for a while and shook his head. "If it's your secret and you don't think it's convenient to say it, then don't say it. Let's take a look at Princess Linglong's injuries first. Where is the true samadhi fire suppressed in her body?" As if she had heard a doctor asking about her daughter's illness, the Snow Emperor said seriously, "There is no fixed location. It is usually hidden in her limbs and bones. It will only show up when it flares up. It appears in a different place every time. It's a shame that we can't find out where it is hidden with our cultivation." Xianxia was silent for a moment before he slowly said, "I'll say the ugly words first. I can only try my best. I don't have the slightest confidence that I can dispel the samadhi true fire in her body. I hope you are mentally prepared. Please don't blame me if I fail." "Of course." The Snow Emperor nodded. The Snow Empress said worriedly, "Nothing will happen, right?" "Don't worry, Snow Empress. Whether or not she can be cured, I will first ensure her safety. I will not forcefully cast the spell." After Xianxia finished speaking, he stepped onto the ice couch and helped Xue Linglong sit up in front of the couple's nervous gazes. The couple immediately understood what he was going to do. He was going to use the most serious method. The Snow Empress immediately helped her unconscious daughter to sit cross-legged. Xianxia sat cross-legged behind Xue Linglong and pressed his palms on her back. He calmed himself down and slowly closed his eyes. He quickly injected his divine sense into her body to check for any abnormalities. However, after combing through Xue Linglong's meridians and bones, as the Snow Empress said, he couldn't find any trace of the true samadhi fire. He didn't know where it was hidden. After opening her eyes, the Snow Empress asked anxiously, "How is it?" The Snow Emperor pulled her back and said with a bitter smile, "Don't be anxious. Let him take his time." Xianxia frowned and thought for a while, then said, "I have to find a way to lure out the true samadhi fire hidden in her body and observe it. Only then can I be sure if I have a way to get rid of it. I'm going to use a more dangerous method now. I'll force the blue fire into her limbs and bones, and even the fine parts of her meridians to search and lure it. I'll have to trouble the two of you to stay vigilant at all times. Don't let anyone disturb me. Don't let me be distracted. If anything happens, please let me know in advance so that I have time to slowly withdraw the blue fire." The couple was shocked when they heard this. Fire had a restraining effect on meditation, not to mention the blue fire. Furthermore, the blue fire had to be injected into the body of the meditation practitioner. Just think about it, the meridians in the human body were extremely delicate, and if an accident were to happen, that person would be crippled even if he didn't die. "Will this work?" the Snow Empress asked with a trembling voice. The Snow Emperor pulled her back again and said through gritted teeth, "Since he dares to do this, he must have the confidence. Don't disturb him. We'll do our best to protect him." The Snow Empress turned around and grabbed his arm. She was so nervous that her body was trembling. Xianxia was confident in his control of fire. Most importantly, he could control the temperature of the fire at any time. As long as there weren't too many disturbances, there wouldn't be any accidents if he was suddenly interrupted by an external force midway. Looking at the nervous Snow Empress, he couldn't be bothered to say anything else. He had to see what the true samadhi fire looked like. The palms that were pressed on Xuelinglong's back shook slightly. 2 lumps of bright blue flames that dyed the entire room enveloped his palms. Then Xuelinglong's body seemed to have been splashed with oil. The blue fire spread throughout her body with a buzz and enveloped her entire body. The Snow Empress was so frightened that her heart almost jumped out of her throat. She was about to let out a scream when the Snow Emperor covered her mouth. The Snow Emperor shook his head and signaled her not to be rash. The two of them, who were abnormally nervous, watched for a while before they finally relaxed. They discovered that although their daughter was enveloped by the blue fire, there was nothing on her body. Not even a strand of her hair was burnt. They had seen people who were good at controlling fire, but that was only in terms of precision. They had never seen someone who could release fire without feeling any warmth. They even suspected that what Xianxia released was the blue fire of the true samadhi fire. However, the terrifying aura that came from the blazing fire clearly told them that it was indeed the blue fire. Such exquisite control of fire made the two of them gasp in amazement. They couldn't help but have high hopes that Xianxia could cure their daughter's injuries. However, Xianxia, who had injected the blue fire into Xuelinglong's body, didn't think so. He used the blue fire to search every part of Xuelinglong's body. He didn't even let go of the private parts of her chest and lower body. However, he still couldn't find any trace of the true samadhi fire. He couldn't figure out where the true samadhi fire had been hidden. Logically, the Snow Emperor and the Snow Empress shouldn't have lied to him about this. However, the thing was clearly in her body. Why couldn't he find it? Just as he was puzzled, he suddenly seemed to feel that Xuelinglong's body was absorbing the energy of his blue fire. How could a meditative cultivator dare to absorb the energy of the blue fire? A thought flashed in Xianxia's mind. He immediately thought of the true samadhi fire. His spirits rose and he immediately observed carefully. After understanding the situation, he was slightly shocked. It wasn't Xuelinglong's body that was absorbing the energy of the blue fire. Instead, there was an unknown energy in her body. It was like a transparent net that filled Xuelinglong's body. The entire net was absorbing the energy of the blue fire to enrich itself. With his high sensitivity to fire, he could roughly guess the reason after little careful analysis. It turned out that the unknown energy that was distributed like a transparent net was the true samadhi fire. However, it was too weak now. It wasn't strong enough to reveal itself and cause trouble. It was absorbing the energy of the blue fire. Good. I'll let you eat until you're full. Let's see what you look like to be able to shake the 3 realms. Xianxia calmed himself down and observed silently. He allowed the energy of the blue fire to slowly dissipate. The husband and wife who were guarding Xianxia in the room saw that Xianxia's expression was sometimes confused, sometimes surprised, and sometimes smiling. They immediately understood that he had discovered something. The husband and wife held each other's hands tightly, hoping for a miracle to happen. After half a day, the blue fire that enveloped Shui Linglong's body began to quickly shrink back into Yu Qianchou's palm. In the end, it completely disappeared into his hand. The husband and wife stared at him. Suddenly Yu Qianchou opened his eyes. He exclaimed in surprise, "What a powerful true Samadhi fire. It actually has spirituality. No wonder it's the true Samadhi fire that shakes the three realms." "How is it?" Snow Empress asked with apprehension and anticipation. Snow Empress also looked at him anxiously. "I've already found its tracks. I spent a lot of effort to use the blue fire to lure it out." Yu Qianchou looked at the husband and wife with a pained expression. He smiled bitterly as if he had paid a painful price. "This fellow's appetite is really big. Can actually swallow the energy of my blue fire. It absorbed quite a lot of my blue fire." Chapter 1024. The husband and wife were anxious to know the final result, but when they heard him say this, the two could only bow to Yu Qianchou. Snow Empress then cupped her fists and said, "Thank you, mister. How is Linglong?" Yu Qianchou put down his hands that were pushing Shui Linglong's back and helped her lie down on the ice couch. He got off the bed and walked between the couple. He said with a serious expression, "To be honest, I'm still not confident that I can expel the Samadhi true fire." The husband and wife looked at each other and secretly exchanged glances. Both of them had witnessed Yu Qianchou's miraculous technique of controlling fire. In addition, they had heard him say that he had found traces of the true Samadhi fire that they were unable to find with their cultivation. They immediately mistakenly thought that Yu Qianchou wanted to use this as a bargaining chip to threaten them. Snow Empress pondered for a while and said, "If Mr. can cure my daughter's injury, I'll tell you anything I know." This was undoubtedly a condition. "As long as you cure my daughter's injury, I'll tell you all the secrets you want to know." However, he had to put it in a roundabout way. He couldn't help it since he had a request. Yu Qianchou rejoiced in his heart when he heard this, but he knew that they were all people who were used to fighting and killing. For something like this that had no proof, they would fall out with each other at a whim. You wouldn't even have a place to complain. Besides, he showed off the blue fire in front of them. How could he do something that was worth losing? Yu Qianchou's face darkened and he said in a deep voice, "What kind of person do you think I am? I, Leaping Thousand Worries Bandit, have my own principles. I have my own bottom line. If I want something, I will fight for it myself. There's no need for you to beat around the bush and ask for charity." These words sounded quite unyielding, but if you thought about it quietly, it was as good as not saying anything. Thieves have morals. The couple were speechless. They didn't expect that taking the initiative to give in would anger him instead. Snow Empress immediately came out and smiled apologetically. "Mister, don't be angry. He was just eager to save his daughter. Forget it, let's not talk about anything else now." Yu Qianchou bluffed for a while and immediately changed the topic. He stared at Shui Linglong, who was on the ice couch, and said, "This Samadhi true fire is a little strange. It used the method of fusing with Princess Linglong's physical body to hide its tracks. Now Princess Linglong is it, and it is Princess Linglong. That's why no one can find its tracks. If I didn't use the green fire to lure it, I probably wouldn't have been able to find it." "Fused together?" The Snow Empress cried out involuntarily. The Snow Emperor raised his hand to signal her not to panic. He frowned and asked, "How did this happen?" "I'm afraid this has something to do with the secret technique you and your wife used to suppress it. It became afraid of being suppressed, so it used another method to protect itself. That's why I said it has spirituality. But then again, if it wasn't for you and your wife suppressing it, I'm afraid Princess Linglong would have turned into ashes. It's not your fault." As Yu Qianchou spoke, he walked out from between the couple and walked to the other side of the ice couch. He looked at Shui Linglong, who had her eyes closed, and said, "To put it bluntly, it has already treated Princess Linglong as a human cauldron. When it is suppressed to the point where it can't do anything, it quietly lurks in Princess Linglong's body and slowly absorbs the energy in Princess Linglong's body. When it accumulates enough energy, it will immediately come out to cause trouble. This is also why it hibernates and explodes at times." After the couple understood the reason, they couldn't help but look at their tortured daughter with sorrow. At first they thought that the Samadhi true fire would only explode occasionally. Who knew that it had been extracting the energy from their daughter's body day and night? As her parents, they were very worried. "Linglong!" The Snow Empress suddenly cried out in grief. She sat sideways on the ice couch and hugged Shui Linglong's body as she sobbed. The Snow Emperor's tightened lips slowly relaxed. She cupped her hands at Yu Qianzhou and said, "Thank you, mister, for clearing up my doubts. Since mister has already understood the Samadhi True Fire, I believe you have a solution?" Upon hearing this, the Snow Empress immediately seemed to go crazy. She stood up in an instant and directly knelt down in front of Yu Qianzhou. Yu Qianzhou was slightly shocked. He still had this bit of reaction speed. He immediately stretched out his hands and held her arms. The plump feeling in his hand and the delicate fragrance that assailed his nostrils didn't make him have any improper thoughts. He was only moved by the pitiful heart of a parent. He smiled bitterly and said, "Madam, why do you have to do this? Yu Qianzhou can't bear it. Quickly get up. If mister doesn't promise to cure my daughter, I will kneel wherever mister goes." The Snow Empress half knelt in the air and cried. The flirtatious expression that she used to tease Yu Qianzhou previously was nowhere to be seen. The Snow Emperor stood at the side with his lips tightly shut and didn't speak. "Damn it. She's my army." Yu Qianzhou didn't know whether to laugh or cry. The action of lifting her up had almost turned into carrying her. The other party's plump chest was already pressed against his abdomen. Without her cultivation he couldn't carry her. As her husband he didn't even care. "Madam, quickly get up. Although I can't guarantee that I can cure her, I promise to do my best." As he spoke, he looked at the Snow Emperor with a bitter expression and said, "Quickly persuade madam. If I can't do it, there's no use even if you force me to death. I've already promised to do my best. What more do you want?" Hearing him say this, the Snow Emperor hurriedly carried his wife. "This old woman is really strong." Yu Qianzhou shook his slightly numb arm and asked doubtfully, "Based on the love you and your wife have for your daughter, you must have found an expert to treat Princess Linglong. What did they say?" The Snow Emperor hugged his wife, shook his head slightly and sighed, "Of course we did. For this matter, I even personally went to the Underworld Royal Palace and found the Emperor of the Underworld, Bai Qi. I told Bai Qi that if he could save my daughter, I and my wife were willing to submit to him. Only then did I convince him. He personally came to the Ice Palace to treat Linglong, but there was nothing he could do. It seemed that this couple was quite influential to be able to invite the Emperor of the Underworld, Bai Qi, who in the Immortal realm could invite the Immortal Emperor, Jin Tai." Yu Qianzhou exclaimed, "Didn't Emperor of the Underworld, Bai Qi, say anything else?" "Yes." There was a flash of hesitation on the Snow Emperor's face, but he didn't hide it and said happily, "After Bai Qi examined Linglong, he said that there were only two ways to save her. One was to find an expert who cultivated the Samadhi True Fire to expel or absorb the Samadhi True Fire in Linglong's body. The other was to find the fire spirit of the 5 spirits of heaven and earth, who could also expel or absorb the Samadhi True Fire. Aside from these two methods, there shouldn't be any other way in the 3 realms, unless we can find an expert from the Immortal realm to forcefully cure her." After saying this, he left with an apologies, and left. Yu Qianzhou was stunned. The 5 spirits of heaven and earth? But not long ago Bai Qi personally sent another message. The Snow Emperor continued with a helpless expression. Bai Qi said that there is someone who might have a way to expel the Samadhi True Fire in Linglong's body. "Oh." Yu Qianzhou came back to his senses and his eyes lit up. "I heard that there are some existences in the netherworld who rarely show their faces, but are even more terrifying than Emperor of the Underworld, Bai Qi. Could it be them?" Seeing the Snow Emperor shake her head, he asked curiously, "Could it be the Immortal Emperor Jin Tai who once fought with Fire Virtue Immortal Lord?" "That's not it either. If it is Jin Tai, then it will be easy." The Snow Emperor sighed. "You should have heard of a madman from the mortal world. He broke into the Netherworld Royal Palace alone, defeated the silver-armored army of the Underworld General, and then fought the 4 Underworld Generals together without losing. In the end he was severely injured by Bai Qi and had to flee." Yu Qianzhou's expression twitched. He was too familiar with that person. He couldn't help but ask weakly, "Is it that person called Bai Changchun?" But he was severely injured by Emperor of the Underworld, Bai Qi, in 3 moves. Even Bai Qi was helpless against the Samadhi True Fire. How could he have a way? "AI. That's him." The Snow Emperor sighed slightly and said, "Back then I had the same doubts as you. Bai Qi said that this person's cultivation was different. He could control wind, fire, thunder, lightning, snow, rain, wind, frost, and all the other natural phenomena. This meant that he had a deep understanding of the various powers of heaven and earth, and was able to control them with ease. Otherwise, with his cultivation he wouldn't have been able to escape my pursuit. The Samadhi true fire could render everyone helpless, but in this person's eyes, it was probably nothing. Yu Qianzhou subconsciously touched his face and said, "Is that person as exaggerated as Bai Qi made him out to be?" I also felt that it was not very possible. I even suspected that Bai Qi wanted to use me to track that person down. But after thinking about it, I know that although Bai Qi has many ways of handling people, he is also a proud person. He wouldn't lie for a defeated opponent. The Snow Emperor looked at his wife who was biting her lips in his arms and shook his head. But that person was chased by Bai Qi into the forbidden area of the netherworld. We don't even know if he is dead or alive. Moreover, Bai Qi didn't dare to barge in. It's not that I'm afraid of death. Let's not talk about these useless things. Mister, please do your best. Hearing this, Yu Qianzhou smiled bitterly. Hearing this, he was even less confident in his method of rescue. He shook his head and said, "I've been gone for too long. I have to go down and tell the others. Otherwise, if Grey Cloud Xin sees that I haven't returned, he will definitely make a big fuss. It might affect our rescue later. After all, my life now involves his life and the safety of the entire Heartless Palace." I understand. The Snow Emperor nodded and comforted his wife. He stretched out his hand and said, "Please." Then he accompanied Yu Qianzhou and went out. The two of them had just arrived downstairs when they bumped into Grey Cloud Xin, who was leading Xin Yu and Ding Xiang to the main hall with a gloomy face. Seeing that Yu Qianzhou was safe and sound, Grey Cloud Xion's expression finally became better. However, when the few of them saw the Snow Emperor and Yu Qianzhou coming together from the back palace, and their attitude was easygoing, they were a little surprised. They didn't know what had happened. "Old Song, you guys stay here for a while. I have some things to ask the Snow Emperor. After this matter is settled, we will leave immediately." Yu Qianzhou walked in front of the few of them and said with a smile. The Snow Emperor nodded at the side, indicating that he would let everyone leave. Chapter 1025. In this way, it instantly caused all of them to be filled with suspicions, and they all muttered in their hearts. What exactly is Yu Qianzhou doing by staying with the Snow Empress behind everyone's back? After exchanging greetings, Yu Qianzhou and the Snow Empress exchanged a meaningful glance. The two of them were about to return to the upper floor of the harem when they suddenly heard the sound of someone flying over and descending. The few of them looked outside, but they didn't see anyone. However, they heard the voice of a woman speaking respectfully from outside. "Junior Lili requests to see the Snow Empress." Yu Qianzhou and the others felt the voice was familiar. When they heard the surname, Li, their expressions became unnatural. They guessed that it was the people from Li Palace. They all thought that the people from Li Palace coming here probably had something to do with what everyone had done. Snow Empress looked at them and said calmly, "Come in." From her tone, she seemed to know the person. Outside the palace, a woman in black leisurely walked in. Her hair was tied up in a bun, and her expression was calm and tranquil. It was none other than the third princess of Li Palace that Yu Qianzhou and the others had seen before. They just didn't know that her name was Lili. Lili couldn't help but be startled when she saw that there were so many people inside the Ice Palace. When she discovered that it was Yu Qianzhou and the others, her expression instantly changed. She stopped where she was and only continued to walk forward after a long while. She was the only friend of the Princess of Ice Palace, Xue Linglong. The two often played together and could be counted as a frequent guest of the Ice Palace. He didn't come here to play with Xue Linglong, but because the inscription symbol that belonged to the Crown Prince, Li Zhong, suddenly cracked. This caused a huge uproar in the Li Palace, which meant that the Crown Prince, Li Zhong, was dead. After checking the location of Crown Prince Li Zhong's death, they found that he was in the center of the Snow Mountain. That was the territory of Snow Empress and Snow Emperor. Although Snow Emperor and Snow Empress would be rude to the people of the immortal world, they wouldn't do anything to the water tribe of the River Styx. Not to mention the relationship between Third Princess Li Li and Ice Palace's Xue Linglong. Logically speaking, the Ice Palace's people wouldn't lay their hands on the Crown Prince of Li Palace. Therefore, they investigated why Crown Prince Li Zhong had gone to the millionly Great Snow Mountain. In the end, Crown Prince Li Zhong's trusted subordinates reported in fear that because Crown Prince Li Zhong had been humiliated by Yu Qianzhou at the Dragon Transformation Sect, He could not swallow this resentment, so he secretly followed Yu Qianzhou and prepared to take revenge along the way. Li Guang was enraged. Although he hated Li Zhong for being narrow-minded and disappointing, it was still his son who had died. The cause of death still had to be investigated. However, the Great Snowy Mountain and the Netherworld River were adjacent to each other. The water tribe of the Netherworld River had long heard of the power of the Snow Emperor and the Snow Empress. In addition, the agreement between the Land Tribe and the Water Tribe prevented him from acting recklessly. As a result, he had Third Princess Li Li bring a group of elite soldiers from the Water Tribe of Li Palace to the interior of the Great Snow Mountain to investigate the cause of Crown Prince Li Zhong's death. Crown Prince Li Zhong's corpse, which had been split into two by Zhou Xian's sword, was found not far from the Netherworld River. The corpse had already been covered by a thick layer of snow, and there were traces of a fierce battle between the Ice Palace's Zhou Xian soldiers in the surroundings. Li Li ordered people to collect her brother's corpse, and had everyone wait in the Netherworld River. Then she came alone to visit the Ice Palace, hoping to obtain some information about her brother's death from the Snow Emperor, or to ask if there were any other suspicious people who had passed through the Great Snow Mountain. In short, she believed that the people of the Great Snow Mountain would not kill her brother. However, when she stepped into the Ice Palace and saw that Yu Qianzhou and the others were also behind her, she thought of the instructions of her brother's trusted subordinates, and combined the cause and effect, immediately locked onto the murderer. However, Yu Qianzhou and the others were a group of sly fellows, and on the surface, they all acted as if nothing had happened. Haha, the little girl is here. The Snow Emperor smiled calmly. Yu Qianzhou was as calm as a mountain, but Xianxia and the others were not very calm, because from the Snow Emperor's words, they could tell that both parties were old acquaintances, and they did not know if she would betray them. This junior greets the Snow Emperor. Li Li bowed. At the side, Yu Qianzhou clapped his hands and laughed. Third Princess, it's really fate. To think that we would meet here again. You know each other? The Snow Emperor looked surprised. In reality, after listening to Zhou Xian's description of the Dragon Transformation sect, and with Li Li's reaction just now, he had already guessed that both parties had met. Seeing the Snow Emperor's attitude, everyone immediately knew what was going on, and glanced slightly at Yu Qianzhou. They did not know what potion he had fed the Snow Emperor, and instantly felt much more at ease. Yes. Li Li replied respectfully and turned to ask calmly, so Senior Snow Emperor is also acquainted with them. The Snow Emperor chuckled and pointed at Zhou Xian. I am old acquaintances with the Heartless Palace's sect leader Wang Qing. They came to visit today and this is the first time I have met them. I see. Li Li nodded indifferently. The Snow Emperor suddenly sighed. This girl is here to look for Ling Long. Her old illness has relapsed and I'm afraid she can't play with you anymore. Sister Ling Long. Li Li's face was filled with discomfort, and then she calmed herself down. She cupped her hands and said, This junior is not here to look for Sister Ling Long, but because my elder brother was killed in the Great Snow Mountain, and I am here to find the murderer under my father's orders. I would like to ask Senior Snow Emperor if you have found any suspicious people? There's such a thing? The Snow Emperor was surprised. Why don't I know? For the sake of his daughter's life he could only put aside his daughter's friend. Li Li paused when she heard that. She recalled that there were traces of an intense battle with the Ice Soul Profound soldiers beside the river Styx, and how could the Snow Emperor not know? She immediately knew that she could not get any information from her. She slowly tilted her head to look at Yu Qianzhou and the others, and asked indifferently, Have you seen the murderer who killed my elder brother? No. The few of them denied, and Yu Qianzhou even frowned and said, Ever since we parted ways with you at the Dragon Transformation Gate, we have never seen your elder brother, let alone the murderer who killed your elder brother. Third Princess, I'm sorry for your loss. I believe that justice has long arms and the murderer will be caught sooner or later. The few of them instantly felt that these words were a little tiresome, and the corner of Grey Cloud Xian's mouth twitched. It was Yu Qianzhou who asked him to kill and now he was saying such nonsense again. Although he knew that these were perfunctory words as the murderer, it was uncomfortable to hear. Ding Xiang and Shen Yu stole a glance at him and they were amused. If that's the case I won't disturb you anymore. Li Li nodded to the few of them, then bowed to the Snow Emperor and said, I'll come and see Sister Ling Long after some time. Now I still have to find the murderer who killed my elder brother, so I'll take my leave now. My condolences, I won't see you off. The Snow Emperor stretched out her hand and said. The few of them watched as Lily slowly walked to the door. Suddenly she turned around and stared at Xinyu with a frosty face. She said sternly, Xinyu, you really didn't see who killed my elder brother? Xinyu was originally a lonely wandering water tribe in the river Styx. He had always been a coward who bullied the kind and feared the evil. When Lily suddenly said that, he was so scared that he almost spoke incoherently. Yu Qianzhou immediately kicked him and shouted coldly, Third Princess is asking you a question. Why are you in a daze? Xinyu staggered from the kick and immediately came back to his senses. He bowed and replied, Third Princess, I really didn't see it. Lily stared at him coldly for a while, then slowly walked out of the palace door without saying a word. She turned into a stream of light and flew away. I didn't expect this gentle and quiet girl to have this side to her. It seems that she has noticed something. The Snow Emperor's gaze swept across the few of them and finally landed on the ashen-faced Xinyu. He couldn't figure out why the water Styx would mix with the people of the celestial world and be so afraid of Yu Qianzhou. Who cares what she saw? This matter was started by Li Zhong. There's no reason that he can't allow others to retaliate when he kills. It's fine if she knows what's good for her, but if she dares to keep pestering me, don't blame me for annihilating the entire River Styx Black Carp clan one day. A trace of haze flashed across Yu Qianzhou's face. He turned and said to the Snow Emperor, Let's continue our business. The Snow Emperor was stunned, then nodded. The two of them walked towards the depths of the ice palace under the suspicious gaze of Songyun Exen and the others. Back in the room above, the Snow Empress, who had calmed down, asked in confusion, Is that girl Lily here? That girl doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. She came here to show off her talent, but she's already gone. Ignore her. The Snow Emperor snorted and looked at Yu Qianzhou. Yu Qianzhou also calmed down and looked at the couple with a burning gaze. Although I can't guarantee that I can cure Princess Linglong, I hope that what you see during the process can rot in your stomach. Otherwise, I won't let the three of you go. I hope you don't think I'm joking. The couple looked at each other, not knowing why he said such a serious thing. What they were going to see must be very important. The Snow Emperor said solemnly, Don't worry about this. We can abide by the rules here and stand aloof from worldly affairs. We are not heartless people. This was what Yu Qianzhou wanted. Otherwise he wouldn't have dared to expose the blue flame in front of them. He didn't say anything else and stepped onto the ice couch again. Just as he helped Xue Linglong sit properly, the Snow Empress immediately helped her daughter sit properly. He sat behind Xue Linglong and calmed down. Then he pressed his palms on Xue Linglong's back. He first used his divine sense to check the condition of Xue Linglong's body. Then he pressed his palms on Xue Linglong's back. His palms shook slightly and two balls of dancing black flames appeared on his palms. A cold aura and a thick deathly aura spread. Black flame. The couple's pupils contracted and they exclaimed in shock. Yu Qianzhou suddenly opened his eyes and stared at the couple. The couple immediately understood that they had disturbed him. They were embarrassed. They begged him to save their daughter, but they were the ones who ruined things. How embarrassing. Yu Qianzhou closed his eyes and the black flame quickly engulfed Xue Linglong. The couple immediately held each other's hands excitedly. This was beyond their expectations. They didn't expect Yu Qianzhou to have not only the blue flame of the Samadhi true fire, but also the black flame that separated the yin and yang realms. Chapter 1026. In this way the husband and wife were more confident that Yu Qianzhou could cure their daughter. How could they not be excited? The black fire in Xue Linglong's body was silent. After waiting for a while, the hidden true Samadhi fire did not come out to absorb the energy of the black fire. The room was also silent. Yu Qianzhou placed his palms on Xue Linglong's back and focused on the movement in her body. He believed that the true Samadhi fire would come out again. With his sensitivity to fire, he could faintly feel that something was stirring in Xue Linglong's body. The husband and wife held their breath and stared at Yu Qianzhou, not daring to breathe too loudly. They hoped to see some clues from Yu Qianzhou's face. However, Yu Qianzhou's expression was as calm as stagnant water. They couldn't see anything. After a full 2 hours, the two of them finally saw a sly smile from the corner of Yu Qianzhou's mouth, and they almost wanted to open their mouths to ask how it was. The true samadhi fire hidden in Xuelinglong's body finally couldn't resist the temptation and appeared. It was like a huge net covering Xuelinglong's body. It quietly appeared in every meridian in her body. It was invisible and formless. Even divine senses couldn't detect it. However, Yu Qianqiu, who had filled Xuelinglong's meridians with the black fire, could easily sense its existence. After the invisible net appeared, it stayed still for a while. It was probably afraid of being suppressed by the husband and wife. After confirming that there was no danger, the ends of each branch wriggled slightly and began to extract the black fire's energy. It was as if they were drinking to their heart's content. Knowing that it was still vigilant, Yu Qianqiu didn't dare to disturb it. It was already deeply rooted in Xuelinglong's body. It had almost spread to every corner of Xuelinglong's body. Even though Yu Qianqiu cultivated the fire technique, he wasn't confident that he could completely remove it from Xuelinglong's body. For Xuelinglong's safety, he could only play a little game with it step by step. Yu Qianqiu had absorbed enough energy from the green fire, and the energy from the black fire was almost at the edge of its mouth. Yu Qianqiu was prepared to feed it the purple fire later. Half a day later, the invisible net stopped absorbing the black fire's energy and went back into Xuelinglong's body. Yu Qianqiu knew that it had absorbed enough and began to retract the remaining black flames. Just as he opened his eyes, he heard the Snow Empress asking anxiously, "Sir, how is it?" Yu Qianqiu looked at the two of them and smiled. He replied, "I was thinking, since you and your wife have a way to suppress it, I believe that if I lure it to a place, you can also trap it." The couple looked at each other and understood that the it Yu Qianqiu was referring to was the true samadhi fire. The Snow Empress frowned and said, "It should be possible, but the key is to completely separate it from Ling Long's physical body. Otherwise, my wife and I will be afraid to take action. You should know that every time we heavily injured it, we couldn't kill it because we were afraid of hurting Ling Long. I will think of a way." Yu Qianqiu told the two of them seriously, "This time I need your cooperation. Inject your consciousness into Ling Long's body and hide it in her dantian. I will think of a way to draw it into her dantian. Remember, don't act rashly. Wait for my notice. Once you receive my notice, immediately trap it in Ling Long's dantian. Don't let it have a chance to come into contact with Ling Long's physical body. I will think of a way to absorb it. How is it? Do you understand what I mean?" His intention was very clear. The two of them weren't fools and naturally understood what he meant. Both of them nodded excitedly. They stepped onto the ice couch and sat cross-legged on either side of Ling Long. They each placed a hand on Ling Long's left and right shoulders. After a while, the couple said with a serious expression, "We can begin." Yu Qianqiu nodded slightly. His palms that were pressed on Xuelinglong's back shook slightly. 2 balls of purple flames suddenly burned on his palms. The terrifying aura that made one's heart palpitate almost made the couple tremble. The Snow Emperor and Snow Empress widened their eyes and couldn't help but exclaim, "Purple flames! Calm your mind," Yu Qianqiu said plainly and closed his eyes. The couple looked at each other in shock. They finally understood why Yu Qianqiu had warned them to keep what they saw to themselves. Otherwise he wouldn't let the three of them off. Imagine how many people in the immortal realm and netherworld would think of ways to get rid of him once this news was spread. Especially Immortal Emperor Jin Tai, who had tasted the power of fire virtue Immortal Lord. He would be the first to not let Yu Qianqiu off. A trace of emotion flashed in the couple's eyes. After living for so many years, it had been a long time since they saw someone who could move them. In order to help them, he had even sacrificed his life. They owed him a huge favor. No matter if it succeeded or not, as long as the couple still had a conscience, they couldn't let him down. The couple sighed and closed their eyes. But when they saw the purple flames in their daughter's meridians, which were like the roots of an old tree, they were shocked again. Not to mention such a powerful fire control technique, just the energy consumption was not small. It undoubtedly proved that Yu Qianqiu was really trying his best. Little did they know that for Yu Qianqiu, who could control thousands of swords at the same time, although it was strenuous, it wasn't a big deal. The purple flames in Xuelinglong's body were silent. Yu Qianqiu could feel the restlessness of the fellow hidden in Xuelinglong's body. Perhaps excitement was more appropriate to describe it. Because of this, Yu Qianqiu was more confident that he could take care of this fellow. He couldn't help but smile. As long as it was to your liking, it was fine. However, the hidden fellow still maintained his vigilance. Although it was restless, it still refused to show itself. After almost an hour, it began to quietly appear from Xuelinglong's body. After confirming that there was no danger, it hurriedly wrapped around the purple flames and madly absorbed them. But this time the absorption wasn't as smooth. Unlike the blue and black flames, Xianxia didn't let it absorb the purple flames. Instead, he increased the control of the purple flames so that the energy contained in the purple flames wouldn't be absorbed so easily. But it was obvious that the purple flames were much more tempting to it than the blue and black flames. Although the amount of purple flames it absorbed was negligible, it couldn't help but want more. Bit by bit, it increased the absorption of the purple flames. At the same time, Xianxia mischievously increased the control of the purple flames so that it wouldn't be able to freely absorb the purple flames' energy. The invisible net of energy bit even tighter. When it started to bite the purple flames without any restraint, Xianxia's lips curled into a smile. With Xuelinglong's dantian as the center, the purple flames that radiated to all the meridians in her limbs and bones started to slowly shrink towards her dantian. The stalemate between the two sides was slowly shrinking. Every time the net was a little discouraged, Xianxia would release a little more purple flames for it to absorb. Immediately it would crazily bite and not let go. Once it was bitten, Xianxia wouldn't let go. He was afraid that it would run away after being fed. Like fishing, he slowly pulled the net out of Xuelinglong's limbs and bones. After spending a lot of effort, the purple flames finally lured this fellow to the vicinity of her dantian. The couple couldn't feel the true samadhi fire. Although they didn't know how the situation was progressing, they realized that most of the purple flames were already gathered near her dantian. They knew that a good show was about to begin. Otherwise, Xianxia wouldn't play such a senseless game right under their noses. They immediately concentrated and prepared. Although the true samadhi fire only had some ignorant spirituality, it could still be considered to have some spirituality. After biting the purple fire and piercing half of its head into the dantian, it was immediately slightly startled and immediately let go. It hid at the entrance and hesitated endlessly, as if it had felt a trace of danger. However, at this moment, the small ball of purple flames in her dantian stretched out a small section of its tail and swayed outside her dantian. The abundant purple flame's energy was leisurely volatilizing. Such arrogance was really intolerable. The invisible and invisible true samadhi fire suddenly pounced on it and bit it without letting go. It crazily absorbed the purple flame's energy. That small section of purple flames was like a startled rabbit. The purple flames that were volatilizing quickly retracted, and with a whoosh, it pulled the true samadhi fire into her dantian. The purple flames condensed into a purple pearl in her dantian. The true samadhi fire that ran into her dantian hugged it and sucked it with all its might. Most of its body was still outside. This was not easy to deal with. Xianxia knew that if he didn't completely lure it in from the surrounding bodies, it would be completely useless. Even if the Snow Emperor and Snow Empress severely injured it, it could still hide in Xuelinglong's body to slowly recover its strength. This was completely treating the symptoms but not the root cause. Xianxia immediately adopted a more flexible method of luring it. He appropriately controlled the purple pearl's energy loss. Every time more true samadhi fire entered his dantian, the purple flame's energy loss would be a little faster. The more that entered, the faster the purple flame's energy loss would be. Finally, the true samadhi fire that was hooked in the surrounding bodies couldn't bear it anymore. It all entered his dantian and wrapped around the purple pearl tightly. It used all its strength to absorb the purple flames. Xianxia was secretly delighted, but he didn't inform the couple to close the door and beat them. He wanted to see what the true samadhi fire looked like, so he released the purple flame's energy for it to absorb. Not long after, a thin layer of three-colored light appeared around the soybean-sized purple ball. A weak flame that was a mixture of green, black and purple wrapped around the purple ball and rose up. As it absorbed more and more purple fire energy, the color of the flame became more and more distinct. So this was the true samadhi fire. It didn't look like much. Xianxia was astonished. He didn't expect that the true samadhi fire that covered Xuelinglong's body like a net could fuse together into such a small wisp, but it could take so long. At this moment the Snow Emperor's surprised voice sounded in his ear. "Not bad, that's it. Can we start?" The true samadhi fire had already appeared. If he continued to hide it, it would be hard to explain if any accidents happened. Yu Qianzhou paused, then decisively transmitted his voice to the couple. Start. Chapter 1027. In an instant the Snow Emperor and Snow Empress worked together. Two beams of white light flashed and formed a transparent ice crystal ball in Xuelinglong's dantian. The cold air trapped the purple pearl and the wisp of true samadhi fire inside. Yu Qianzhou suddenly felt a chill in his palm. He immediately realized that Xuelinglong had been frozen into an ice cube. He couldn't help but be shocked. He opened his eyes and looked at the couple. He realized that they were not moving. He knew that his worries were unnecessary. He continued to use his divine sense to observe what was happening inside. The true samadhi fire was happily sucking on the purple pearl. It suddenly realized that its surroundings had changed. The burning flame suddenly stopped. It realized that it was the thing that had almost turned it into nothingness many times. It instantly panicked. The flame trembled violently. It dashed around, but it couldn't break through the layer of ice crystal ball. They finally trapped this damn thing. The couple opened their eyes excitedly. They looked at Yu Qianzhou with gratitude. The Snow Empress was very excited. Mister, what do we do next? Yu Qianzhou closed his eyes and nodded. You just need to trap it. Leave the rest to me. The couple nodded and closed their eyes to observe what was happening inside their daughter's body. The purple pearl in Xuelinglong's dantian suddenly rotated slowly. The true samadhi fire that had brushed past it suddenly shrunk to the side of the ice crystal as if it had seen a ghost. The flame trembled and seemed to be extremely afraid. However, the space sealed by the ice crystal was only so big. It had nowhere to hide even if it wanted to. It could only feel a strong suction force sucking away the energy in its body. As the purple pearl rotated faster and faster, the energy in its body was quickly drained away. It found that its body that had been strengthened with great difficulty was becoming weaker and weaker. Little fellow, do you think you can eat my stuff so easily? Spit it out with interest no matter how much you eat. Yu Qianzhou laughed coldly in his heart. He could clearly feel that his purple fire pearl was becoming stronger and stronger. The Snow Empress and her husband were also excited. They could feel that the energy of the samadhi true fire was being rapidly absorbed by the purple pearl. The strange tricolored flame was becoming smaller and smaller. It was shivering inside, but it had nowhere to run. In a short while, it had shrunk to the size of a bean. Everyone felt that the end of the little fellow had arrived. However, what surprised everyone was that when the little fellow was almost absorbed until it was only the size of a spark, it suddenly shot towards the ice crystal like a shooting star. With a "da" sound, it pierced through the ice crystal and instantly disappeared into the wall of Xuelinglong's dantian. Ran away. The three of them shuddered and opened their eyes at the same time. They looked at each other. Yu Qianzhou's expression twitched and his face darkened. He said in a low voice, "Can any of you explain to me what's going on? Didn't you say you could trap it? Could it be that you're playing with me on purpose?" What he wanted to absorb was not the energy of the samadhi true fire, but the spiritual consciousness. He wanted to absorb it and study it properly. He wanted to see if he could fuse it into his own samadhi true fire in advance. He was about to succeed, but this accident happened. Now all his previous efforts were wasted. He couldn't help but be angry. The husband and wife were already dumbfounded. After being at a loss for a while, they both slowly withdrew the white light into their palms. They slowly lowered their arms and stood there in silence. Following that, an extremely vexed expression appeared on their faces. Yu Qianzhou withdrew the purple flame. The muscles on his face squirmed. He looked around and said, "Who can explain to me what this means?" He patted Xuelinglong, who was already frozen into an ice statue. Sigh. The Snow Empress let out a long sigh and said with endless melancholy, "We were too careless. We thought that the little bastard had already accepted its fate and had no way to escape. Who would have thought that I would be paralyzed by its trembling appearance, allowing it to escape through the gap between our ice spirit harmony with its tiny body?" A very melodramatic reason. But Yu Qianzhou knew that he wasn't lying to him. The husband and wife wouldn't joke around with their daughter's life. The corner of Yu Qianzhou's mouth curled up into a cold smile. He gradually laughed out loud. He stood up and looked down at the family of three. He sneered and said, "A sin caused by heaven can be forgiven, but a sin caused by oneself cannot be escaped." This saying is completely right. I saw a huge joke, but this joke isn't funny at all. There's still a chance. The Snow Empress suddenly seemed to have woken up from a dream. She pounced over and hugged onto Yu Qianchou's legs. She squeezed out an extremely forced smile on her terrified face. She raised her head and looked at Yu Qianchou, almost begging, "Mister, let's try one more time. Lure it out again. This time we definitely won't let it escape again. You've seen its spirituality with your own eyes. Do you think you can use the same method to lure it out again?" Yu Qianchou stood coldly on the ice couch. He lowered his head slightly and looked at the forced smile that was hugging onto his legs. He heartlessly shattered her dream and said, "If it was so easy to lure it out, then it wouldn't be the Samadhi true fire. It would be a stupid fire that can't even be compared to firewood for cooking." No. The Snow Empress couldn't accept this fact. She hugged onto Yu Qianchou's legs tightly and begged with a trembling voice, "There's still a chance. There's still a way. I know that, mister, you definitely have a way. Can you try one more time? I promise that this time, I definitely won't let it escape again. I beg you to try one more time." Sigh. The Snow Emperor let out another long sigh. He stood up and forcefully carried his wife away. He dragged her under the ice couch and said dejectedly, "Mister is right. It won't be tricked a second time. Think of another way." No. The Snow Empress let out a heart-wrenching scream. Tears flowed down her face. She stretched out an arm and scratched at Yu Qianchou, who was standing on the ice couch with his hands clasped behind his back. It seemed like she wanted to grab Yu Qianchou and try again. Yu Qianchou stood quietly with his hands clasped behind his back. He looked at her coldly without the slightest emotion. He didn't move at all and didn't show any sympathy. The Snow Emperor shook his head weakly while hugging her. He emptied one of his hands towards his daughter, who was frozen stiff on the ice couch. He opened his fingers slightly, and immediately sucked in a gust of cold air from his daughter's body. Xue Linglong thawed on the spot and fell back softly. Yu Qianchou, who originally wanted to be indifferent, bent over to help her up. He slowly let her lie on the ice couch and then he flashed under the ice couch. Unexpectedly at this moment, Xue Linglong let out a moan. Her eyelids moved as if she wanted to open her eyes. The three of them looked over. They didn't expect her to wake up so quickly. But after thinking about it, they understood. Normally, the true Samadhi fire would act up twice in 2 days, and Xue Linglong would only wake up after being suppressed for 2 more times. However, a large amount of the true Samadhi fire's energy was extracted by Yu Qianchou this time, and it was almost eradicated. Its vitality was greatly damaged, and it probably wouldn't have the ability to stir up trouble in a short period of time. Linglong. The Snow Empress finally let out a surprised cry in the midst of her sorrow. The Snow Empress immediately squeezed out a smile and said, "Take care of Linglong first. I'll go discuss with Mister if there's any way to completely get rid of the true Samadhi fire in Linglong's body." The Snow Empress obediently agreed, then broke free from her husband's embrace. She bowed to Yu Qianchou and said, "Please, mister." Then she hurriedly climbed onto the couch. Her daughter was still the most important. The Snow Empress smiled bitterly and shook her head. She extended her hand and gestured to Yu Qianchou outside the door, and the two of them slowly walked out. Both of them didn't say a word all the way from upstairs to downstairs. Unknowingly, the two of them walked to the main entrance of the ice palace. On the ice cliff, there were various colored ice sculptures that formed a neon glow, and it was exceptionally eye-catching in the pitch-black netherworld. No one knew when it started snowing again. The wind was light, but the heavy snowflakes fluttered in the air. The footprints left on the ice cliff had already been covered by the snow. This place was supposed to be cleaned from time to time. For the Snow Empress and her family, clearing the snow was a piece of cake, but they were delayed by some matters. The Snow Emperor wasn't in the mood to clear the accumulated snow on the ice cliff. The two of them walked on the snow side by side in the neon lights that reflected each other. Every step they took left a deep footprint in the snow, emitting a dull crunching sound, just like the mood of the two of them. Under the guidance of the Snow Empress, the two of them slowly walked into a colorful pavilion. They wanted to avoid the falling snow, but the snow was carried in by the wind from time to time, and there was already snow in the pavilion. The Snow Empress casually set up a soundproof enchantment. She looked at the white light between the undulating mountains under the night sky and sighed, "Sorry to trouble you." Yu Qianchou, on the other hand, silently stared at an icicle that supported the pavilion. There were quite a few ice souls inside. He did not reply because he had lost a chance to understand the Samadhi true flame. He was somewhat unhappy. Do you have any other way to get rid of the true Samadhi fire in Linglong's body? The Snow Empress retracted her gaze and tilted her head to look at Xianxia. She was carefully observing his expression. I have the 3 mystical flames that can fuse with the true Samadhi fire. You've seen it. Xianxia let out a sigh of relief. Thinking that he didn't lose anything, he cheered up a little and smiled. When I fuse the 3 mystical flames into the true Samadhi fire, I'm sure I can easily get rid of the problem in Princess Linglong's body. The Snow Empress shook her head and smiled bitterly. From what I know, to fuse with the true Samadhi fire, you need to be at least an immortal emperor, but now. He didn't have the confidence to continue. It's a little too long. Didn't the Emperor of the Underworld by Qi say that there's a fire spirit among the 5 spirits of heaven and earth that can save Princess Linglong? Xianxia looked at her and smiled. Maybe I'm lucky enough to find that fire spirit. Find the fire spirit? The Snow Empress was startled and shook her head slightly. Easier said than done. Wanting to meet the 5 spirits of heaven and earth is like looking for a needle in a haystack. You can only follow your fate, you can't force it. How come I've never heard of the 5 spirits of heaven and earth? Xianxia looked at her and frowned. Can you tell me what's going on? Chapter 1028. Some things just happened when the conditions were right. They couldn't be forced. Xianxia had racked his brains just to make sure that the conditions were right. Now that the conditions were right, the Snow Emperor didn't hide it like before and only paused for a moment. The 5 spirits of heaven and earth have always existed in the legends. It is said that they are 5 spiritual beings born from heaven and earth, each with extraordinary talents and abilities. The Snow Emperor looked at the night sky and said slowly, originally I only heard of the existence of the 5 spirits of heaven and earth by chance, but I didn't know which 5 spirits they were. Later, because of Linglong's matter, I asked the Emperor of the Underworld by Qi, and by Qi to confirm the existence of the 5 spirits of heaven and earth. They are the water spirit, the fire spirit, the metal spirit, the wood spirit, and the earth spirit. Xianxia was surprised to hear this. Why did it coincide with the 5 elemental arts that he had comprehended? He scratched his face and asked suspiciously, what form do the 5 spirits of heaven and earth exist in? Are they very powerful? I can't be sure what their forms are. They are spiritual beings born from the 5 elements of water, fire, metal, wood, and earth. Some of them are still spiritual beings and haven't formed a fixed form. But once they have a foundation, they should all transform into human forms to cultivate. As for how powerful they are, it depends on how deep their cultivation is. The Snow Emperor said while thinking. It seemed that he didn't know much, so he suddenly asked, do you think the immortal Emperor Jin Tai of your immortal world is powerful? Immortal Emperor Jin Tai? Of course he's powerful. Otherwise, how could he rule the immortal world? Xianxia was shocked. He stared at the Snow Empress, dumbfounded. After a while he stuttered. He means... The Snow Emperor looked at him and nodded with a smile, undoubtedly telling him that he had guessed correctly. Xianxia swallowed and calmed his emotions. Jin Tai, his surname is Jin. Is he the metal spirit of the 5 spirits of heaven? That's right. It's good that you know this, but don't tell anyone else. Otherwise, if Jin Tai finds out, he might harm you. I suspect that even Bai Qi, the Emperor of the Underworld, doesn't know about Jin Tai's background, the Snow Emperor said. Hearing this news, Xianxia rubbed his palms excitedly. It was not because he had learned this big secret, but because he was sure that he had 1 or 2 friends in the middle stage of the Underworld Emperor realm. This was something that couldn't be bought with money. The risk he had taken previously had finally paid off. But then he was stunned. He intertwined his fingers together as if he had thought of something. He asked suspiciously, since even the Emperor of the Underworld by Qi couldn't see through Jin Tai's background, how did you know? I knew you would ask this question. Since you are honest with me, I won't hide it from you, the Snow Emperor laughed. After the Snow Emperor laughed, endless emotions surged on her face. She waved her arm and pointed to the vast land under the curtain of night and said with great emotion, back then my wife and I were chased by our enemies, and were forced to enter this snow region which was extremely dangerous at that time. Just when my wife and I were seriously injured and on the verge of death, who knew that by chance, The two of us in an ice abyss unexpectedly swallowed a pair of ice spirits that were born from the snow region of the vast ice plains. Ice spirits? Xianxia was stunned. Aren't the 5 spirits of heaven and earth water, fire, metal, wood, and earth? How come there is an ice spirit? Yes, it is an ice spirit. The Snow Emperor nodded with a smile. It is a great fortune to encounter an ice spirit, but my wife and I encountered a pair of ice spirits, a male and a female. Because of this we both escaped from death. If this is not God's will, then what is? It is also because of this fortuitous encounter that my wife and I have the achievements we have today. Really good luck, why can't I encounter it? Xianxia smacked his lips and said with a face full of envy. He wasn't pretending, but he was really envious. This was called possessing a mountain of treasures without realizing it. Didn't he think about how he had only cultivated from a mortal to an immortal in a mere few decades? Although the Snow Empress and her husband had obtained the ice spirit, they had spent tens of thousands of years to reach their current cultivation. He didn't know it was a blessing in disguise. However, envious was envious. He asked in confusion, but what does this have to do with Jin Tai being a metal spirit? Spiritual chi, that kind of unique spiritual chi born in the world, and is different from any spiritual chi in the 3 realms. The Snow Emperor revealed an expression of reminiscence and said, that was by chance and was also the first time I met Jin Tai. From his body I sensed a spiritual chi similar to the ice spirits, and immediately determined that he was some kind of spirit. Thinking of his surname and some observation, I confirmed that he was the metal spirit of the 5 spirits of heaven and earth. There should be no mistake. So that's how it is. Xianxia nodded in understanding, but the doubt on his face didn't diminish. He asked doubtfully, didn't you say that there are only 5 spirits of heaven and earth? Why did the ice spirits come out? According to the legends, there are indeed only 5 spirits. This shouldn't be wrong. According to my understanding, after absorbing the ice spirit may only be a branch of the water spirit. Maybe there are other spirits like the wind spirit or the lightning spirit in this world. I reckon that the 5 elements of water, fire, metal, wood, and earth are the orthodox ones. Of course, this is only my guess and I can't be sure what's going on. The Snow Emperor muttered to herself and said her thoughts. There was a short silence in the pavilion and both of them had their own thoughts. Under the quiet night sky, heavy snow swirled. With their cultivation, they could hear the rustling sound of falling snow in the surrounding snow. A gust of wind blew and some drifting snowflakes were blown in. Xianxia stretched out his hand to catch a piece of feather-like snow. Watching it gradually melt in his palm, he frowned and said to himself, with my current cultivation, it's impossible to melt the Samadhi true fire. It seems that to remove the Samadhi true fire in Ling Long's body, I can only find the fire spirit. But where should I find it? Even if I find it, I might not be able to invite it. The Snow Emperor treated him sincerely, and he now regarded the Snow Emperor as a friend. He began to seriously worry about Ling Long's injury. He was like this. He would repay a drop of water with a gushing spring, and on the other hand he would seek revenge for the smallest grievance. He was very extreme. Hearing this, the Snow Emperor felt very gratified and she faintly smiled and said, actually, the reason why my husband and I were able to devour the ice spirit by chance is related to the great ice law that we cultivate. And I can see that you are proficient in controlling fire, so it is easier for you to encounter the fire spirit. Maybe you can also devour the fire spirit. That way, you will also have a way to remove the Samadhi true fire in Ling Long's body. You mean that I can devour the fire spirit if I cultivate the fire art? Then if I cultivate the metal art, wouldn't I be able to devour the immortal Emperor Jin Tai? Before he could finish, Xianxia's body shook and he was stunned by his own words. The Snow Emperor slightly nodded and smiled, that's about it. But Jin Tai won't be so easy to devour. The key is that his cultivation is too high. Plus, with Jin Tai's personality, he won't let you devour him obediently. You have to defeat him first. However, there are also benefits to having a high cultivation. If you can devour Jin Tai, then his cultivation will be transferred to you. Then congratulations, you will become a late immortal emperor expert, hee. Saying this, he couldn't help but laugh. He thought that Xianxia was just using Jin Tai as an example, so he casually said this. How could he know that Xianxia was proficient in the metal art in addition to the fire art? Devour Jin Tai. Jin Tai's cultivation will be transferred to me? Xianxia's voice trembled as he asked. His heart was thumping wildly and he couldn't suppress it no matter how hard he tried. His heart was thumping non-stop in his chest. He couldn't wait to take a dagger and stab it into his chest so that his heart would stop beating so that he wouldn't be able to take it if it continued to beat. He was about to have high blood pressure. Of course this is the truth, but I don't think anyone in the three realms has the ability to devour Jin Tai, hee. The Snow Emperor suddenly couldn't help but laugh. No matter how high Jin Tai's cultivation is, you don't have the fortune to enjoy it. Why are you so excited? The key is that I have the fortune but I don't have the fate. You can't understand the pain that I, your brother, can see but can't touch. Why do you have to say these damned words to me? I'll lose sleep. Xianxia walked out of the pavilion speechlessly. He raised his hands high and raised his head, allowing the icy snow to fall on his face to cool it down. It was as if he was asking the heavens for help. In his heart he was begging heaven and earth, hoping that Bai Chongqun was still alive. Because if he wanted to devour Jin Tai's cultivation that could make people drool, he could only pin his hopes on Bai Chongqun. Among the people he knew, perhaps only Bai Chongqun, that super abnormal person, could defeat Jin Tai. Then as a disciple he could bask in his master's glory, help his master clean up the battlefield and eat Jin Tai at the same time. This was a matter of course. The Snow Emperor naturally saw that something was wrong with this guy and asked with a frown, "What's wrong?" Xianxia put down his hands, turned around and walked back into the pavilion and said solemnly to the Snow Emperor, "I went outside and thought about it calmly. Now I want to tell you that if I can fuse with the Samadhi true fire, or devour the fire spirit, as long as there is a way, I will come back as soon as possible to remove the Samadhi true fire from Linglong's body." He felt that the information revealed by the Snow Emperor was worth the price. However, the Snow Emperor was stunned. Looking at his sincere expression and sincere eyes, she was a little choked and speechless. She began to figure out why he was so anxious about Linglong's injury. Could it be? She gritted her teeth and said tentatively, "It seems that you are very concerned about Linglong." Xianxia didn't think too much about it and the flattery came out of his mouth. He patted his chest and said passionately, "Of course. From today onwards your daughter is my niece. I will definitely find a way to relieve her pain." Chapter 1029. Niece. The Snow Emperor was stunned. He thought that Xianxia had taken a fancy to his daughter, but he didn't expect that he only saw her as his niece. Instantly he heaved a sigh of relief. To men, some men could be brothers or be sworn brothers who would lay down their lives for each other. That was a man's admiration for another man. No matter how many flaws they had, they couldn't hide their manly nature. But if he was asked to be his daughter's man, to be his son-in-law, no matter if he said it out loud, agreed or stopped it, he wouldn't be too willing. Because only men would think that they understood the bad habits of men, just like how women could always see the many flaws of other women. "Why? Don't you want to see me as a friend or brother?" Xianxia pretended to be angry and said, "Looks like I'm climbing up the social ladder." "Don't, that's not what I mean." The Snow Emperor hurriedly waved his hand and responded, "You and I should be brothers. I can't ask for more." Everyone had their own selfish motives and everyone knew how to put on an act. For hands clasped together. You called him Big Brother Shui and he called him Brother Yu. After all the greetings they were just short of kowtowing and becoming sworn brothers. Perhaps even the heavens couldn't stand it anymore. It was so disgusting that the snow didn't dare to fall anymore. The snow outside had stopped, but the cold wind still blew in from time to time. The snow has stopped? Xianxia took the opportunity to pull his hand away from the Snow Emperor's hand. He held onto the ice pillar and glanced outside. The snow had stopped. Looking at the neon lights shining in the ice sculptures outside, he couldn't help but exclaim, "Brother Snow, your ice soul is really amazing. I remember Linglong showed her skill and it really opened my eyes." The Snow Emperor waved his hand, and the snow on the ice table in the center of the pavilion was blown away. There were more than 10 ice souls in the ice layer on the table and they were very beautiful. He touched the table and smiled and said, "These things are a little amazing in front of outsiders. They are the ice soul mystic soldiers of the Great Snow Mountain. The peace of the millions of miles of snow region is maintained by them." Ice soul mystic soldier, not a bad name. Xianxia sat on the stool and leaned on the table to carefully observe the ice souls in the layer of ice. Other than the beautiful color, he couldn't find any clues. He looked around and clicked his tongue. "It looks like you have close to 10,000 ice soul profound soldiers under you. Nearly 10,000? The Snow Emperor was startled and looked at Yu Qianzhou, guessing that he wasn't pretending and really didn't know. He immediately laughed and said, "Brother, you underestimate my strength too much. Although my cultivation isn't very high in the Netherworld, do you know why I can occupy the Great Snow Mountain for millions of miles in the Netherworld as my territory? Do you know why Fire Virtue Immortal Lord wanted to use my Ice Soul Profound Ice to fight against Immortal Emperor Jintai? Do you know why I can invite the Emperor of the Underworld by Qi here at any time? I don't know." Yu Qianzhou shook his head weakly. Although he didn't know, he could feel the arrogance of a bastard from the Snow Emperor. One look and he knew that the Snow Emperor was full of confidence. "The close to 10,000 Ice Soul Profound soldiers here are just for fun." The Snow Emperor pointed around and then pointed majestically at the vast snowfield and said proudly, "I, the Snow Emperor, can be counted as one of the few overlords in the Netherworld. I have 800,000 Ice Soul Profound soldiers at my command. Even Madame Heiqi, the beloved concubine of Bai Qi, and her dark army under her command wouldn't dare to trespass here. Otherwise, I'll let her have a taste of my 800,000 Ice Soul Profound soldiers." Yu Qianzhou was shocked. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that he was shocked. 800,000 Ice Soul Profound soldiers. Good heavens. You're not bluffing, right? He couldn't help but stand up and walk to the Snow Emperor's side. He opened his eyes wide and looked at the place where the Snow Emperor pointed, but he didn't see anyone. However, he thought that the Snow Emperor wouldn't boast in front of him and was just giving advice. Thinking of the scene where Shui Linglong casually threw out the Ice Soul Profound soldiers, he sized up the Snow Emperor and said, "Could it be that you have hundreds of thousands of subordinates with you at any time? There's no need for that. My wife and I don't fight with the world. If people don't offend us, we won't offend them. We maintain our powerful strength just to ensure that we can live a peaceful life. There's no need to carry them with us all the time." The Snow Emperor pointed around and said, "Most of them are scattered and hidden under the boundless ice and snow, guarding this vast snowfield. There's also an advantage to this. By absorbing the energy from the ice and snow, their cultivation will increase steadily. However, the speed of improvement will be very slow compared to our cultivation speed. Their advantage is that they can slowly improve day and night without stopping. They can improve their cultivation by themselves." Yu Qianzhou was shocked again and immediately asked, "I really can't help it. How did you get these Ice Soul Profound soldiers?" In fact, most of the higher-ups in the Netherworld knew some of the reasons. Although they didn't know much, it wasn't a secret. Therefore, the Snow Emperor didn't hide anything from him and told him directly, "Most of the Ice Soul Mystic soldiers come from the original ghosts and demons or some meditation cultivators in the snow region. After my wife and I devoured and merged the ice spirits, we comprehended a great technique by chance. We called it the Xianming Soul Refining Technique. We captured them and erased their spiritual sense, then refined them into ice spirits and planted our spiritual sense imprints to control them. After my wife and I swept through the entire snowy region, we obtained hundreds of thousands of Ice Soul Profound soldiers. After that, anyone who trespassed into this place would be captured and refined into Ice Soul Profound soldiers. After so many years, we naturally accumulated these 800,000 people." Yu Qianzhou sucked in a breath of cold air. This couple was truly ruthless. So many Ice Soul mystic weapons were actually refined with 800,000 lives. He couldn't help but bitterly smile. "You two are really willing to spend time. You must have spent a lot of time capturing these 800,000 meditation cultivators." The Snow Emperor glanced at him disapprovingly and said, "You're thinking the wrong way. It won't take too much of our time. Apart from the thousands of Ice Soul Profound soldiers who caught them at the beginning, the rest will be caught by these thousands of Ice Soul Profound soldiers. When there are enough people, we just need to find some time to refine them. You should know that these Icy Soul Profound soldiers can't be killed unless they encounter an absolute nemesis like you. So they will only snowball in number. My wife and I only need to refine them every once in a while, and we don't need to worry about anything at all. Of course, if we meet an expert that they can't deal with, we will personally take action." Yu Qianzhou immediately thought of the scene when Grey Cloud Xian and Ding Xiang fought against the Ice Soul Profound soldiers. Indeed, no matter how high their cultivation was, they couldn't kill those Ice Soul Profound soldiers. They were clearly dead, but they could inexplicably come back to life. It was really shocking. From this, he thought of the Snow Emperor and his wife refining the Ice Soul Profound soldiers. It was really as easy as rolling a snowball. Tee. If this goes on, won't your great snow mountain become the #1 force in the netherworld sooner or later? No, become the #1 force in the 3 realms. Yu Qianzhou sighed. He could imagine the scene of the ice soul profound soldiers spreading quickly in the 3 realms like a deadly virus. He was excited that he had such a strong backer, but he was also secretly shocked by this terrifying scene. He was already thinking if he should find a chance to get rid of this family of scourges. Otherwise they would threaten him sooner or later. However, the Snow Emperor's next words dispelled his worries. The Snow Emperor smiled lightly and said, "Brother, your thinking is a little too naive. Let's not talk about whether we have that kind of ambition or not. First of all, once the Ice Soul Profound soldiers leave the snow region, their power will be greatly reduced. Without snow they can't be resurrected into various kinds of snow monsters that can attack. Unless we follow the Ice Soul Profound soldiers wherever they go and cast a spell to make the snow fall first. But this is no different from putting out a cup of water on a burning cart of firewood. You have to know that there are many powerful forces in the netherworld. Once they unite, even Bai Qi has to give way. How can a mere Ice Soul Profound soldier stop them? Moreover, now that the Great Snow Mountain is famous, ordinary people don't dare to trespass. So the number of Ice Soul Profound soldiers has almost not increased. Also, you have to know that our cultivation is not the top in the netherworld. There are many experts who can kill us. Once we go too far, naturally someone will come out to deal with us. As long as we are killed, do you think those Ice Soul Profound soldiers that are driven by our spiritual sense imprints will still be useful? Therefore the rules that should be obeyed must be obeyed. Since the ancient times, no one has ever been able to unify the entire underworld. Even the powerful emperor of the underworld, Bai Qi, could only go with the flow. Unifying the underworld is just a pipe dream. Hee. I'm just saying it casually. Yu Qianzhou smiled awkwardly. He was relieved but also a little regretful. Originally he wanted to find the Snow Emperor and the Snow Emperor to borrow 100 or 200,000 Ice Soul Profound soldiers to kill everyone. Now it seemed that there was no hope. These Ice Soul Profound soldiers could only do whatever they wanted in the snow region. Just as he was sighing, the Snow Emperor suddenly turned his head to his ear with a strange expression. His voice became magnetic and said, "Brother, do you want to practice the Xianming Soul Refining Technique?" Xianming Soul Refining Technique? Yu Qianzhou was startled. Then he remembered that he had heard of it before. It was the technique to refine Ice Soul Profound soldiers. He said in astonishment, "I haven't swallowed and merged with the ice spirit. Why would I practice it?" "Brother, you're wrong." The Snow Emperor smiled gently and said, "Brother is proficient in the art of controlling fire. As long as you find the fire spirit to swallow and merge with, you can still practice the Xianming Soul Refining Technique. If I can refine Ice Soul Profound soldiers, you can refine Fire Soul Profound soldiers." Yu Qianzhou's mouth opened silently. His eyes became brighter and brighter. Suddenly he hugged the Snow Emperor's arm and said, "Brother Snow, you're really my good brother. Oh, you're my big brother. You're closer to me than my real big brother. I've finally thought it through under your guidance. It's not a burden to have more skills. Learning one more skill is one more skill. There will be a time when it's useful. Come on." He opened a palm and stretched it out towards the Snow Emperor. His 5 fingers moved nimbly. "Give me the technique of the Xianming Soul Refining Technique. I'll definitely study it diligently. And I'll bring it to greater heights. I won't let you down." Chapter 1030. The Snow Monarch's expression stiffened. She did not expect to see Yu Qianzhou with such a huge contrast. After that, a smile appeared on her face. She pushed Yu Qianzhou's hand away and said, "I can teach you the Xianming Soul Refining Technique, but not now." Why? Yu Qianzhou couldn't believe it. He suddenly felt like he was fooled. "Don't misunderstand." Snow Emperor said sincerely, "There's something I have to make clear to you. Before you find and merge the fire spirit, even if I teach you the Xianming Soul Refining Technique, you can't practice it successfully. Why don't we make a gentleman's agreement? As long as you come back after merging the fire spirit, I will teach you the cultivation method of the Xianming Soul Refining Technique without missing a word. How about it?" Yu Qian replied with a worried, "Oh." His hand that was grabbing the man's arm and the hand that was reaching out slowly retracted. He realized that there was no such thing as a free lunch in this world. He immediately understood Snow Emperor's intention. It was very simple. She wanted him to come back in time to remove the Samadhi true fire from Xue Linglong's body after merging the fire spirit. Snow Emperor saw that Yu Qianzhou understood her intention and could only smile bitterly. Actually, she didn't suspect that Yu Qianzhou wouldn't come back to save Xue Linglong after devouring the fire spirit. The reason why she threw out such a big temptation was that she hoped Yu Qianzhou could put more effort into finding the fire spirit and strive to find it as soon as possible. As for whether Yu Qianzhou could merge the Samadhi true fire, she didn't count on it. She pinned all her hopes on him finding the fire spirit. She explained with some embarrassment, "I just hope that Linglong can suffer less. I don't mean anything else. I hope you can understand my painstaking efforts as a parent." Yu Qianzhou was actually quite disgusted with the Snow Emperor setting a trap for him to fall into. But since the other party had made their intentions clear, his anger was somewhat appeased. Then he thought about how he had no way to use the Xianming soul refining technique before he swallowed and fused with the fire spirit. In addition, the other party had treated him with sincerity, so he couldn't feel any resentment. He furrowed his brows and suddenly raised his head. "Fine. That's settled then. After I get rid of the Samadhi true fire in Linglong's body, I'll ask you for the Xianming soul refining technique's incantation. Let's clap hands and swear." A palm rose into the air and the Snow Emperor's spirits rose. She clapped her palm together and said excitedly, "It's a deal." Yu Qianzhou's body swayed from the other party's overly excited slap. He couldn't help but grumble, "Why are you using so much force?" He retracted his hand with a face full of resentment. The Snow Emperor immediately stretched out his hand to grab his shoulder and shook it. He laughed heartily and said, "Brother, please bear with me." It was as if he had forgotten all enmity with a smile. "Your wife feels good. Go and hug your wife, don't hug me. It's disgusting." Yu Qianzhou's shoulder shook and he twisted his body to avoid the Snow Emperor. The Snow Emperor, who had always prided herself on being pure and elegant, raised one hand. Her expression was twitching. However, Yu Qianzhou acted as if nothing had happened. He pointed at the various ice souls in the pillar that supported the pavilion and asked, "It seems that the reason why the colors of these ice souls are different is related to their cultivation. How do you differentiate them?" The Snow Emperor lowered her hand and smiled bitterly. "The ice souls formed by cultivators who have cultivated to the level of Netherworld Knight are orange-yellow. Those who have cultivated to the level of Netherworld Sage are azure. Those who have cultivated to the level of Netherworld Venerable are red. Those who have cultivated to the level of Netherworld Emperor are black. It's very easy to differentiate them." Yu Qianzhou nodded slightly. He stared at the various ice souls in the pillar and admired them for a while. Then he clasped his hands behind his back and looked at the snow mountain in the distance. He seemed to have something on his mind. A gust of cold wind blew over and fluttered the hem of his robe. He asked indifferently, "From the look of that woman, Li Li, she seems to be very determined. Do you think that the people of the Li Palace will be waiting for us in the underworld river? Are you preparing to leave? Don't you want to stay in my ice palace for a few more days?" The Snow Emperor lightly moved a step and sat on an ice stool. She looked at his back in the neon light and asked, "No need. I have no way of dispelling the true Samadhi fire in Linglong's body. I can't stand your wife's crazy appearance from time to time." Yu Qianzhou didn't move. He narrowed his eyes and stared into the distance. He said, "Besides, I have my own matters to attend to. I can't stand to miss Lady Jin's wedding." "Then I won't keep you any longer." The Snow Emperor sat there with one hand on the table. She lightly patted it with her palm and said, "But I must advise you, in order to avoid conflict with the water race of the underworld river, don't go by water. Go by land. I see that the information in your ice palace is somewhat blocked. This might have something to do with the fact that your subordinates are all ice soul profound soldiers and can't help you scout for information. You might not know, but Songyun Exin has already mastered the unrequited love palace's 3 swords in 1 sword drawing style. With Songyun Exin here, the people of the Li Palace can't do anything to me. Before the dragon transformation gate, I already made them hesitate for fear of harming the innocent," Yu Qianzhou indifferently said. "Songyun Exin has mastered the 3 swords in 1 sword drawing style?" The Snow Emperor was slightly solemn. Back then, Wang Qing had used this move to kill the Fire Virtue Immortal Lord. He had seen it with his own eyes, so he naturally knew the power of this move. After a moment of silence he shook his head and said, "This matter has nothing to do with how powerful Zhou Xian is. Even if Zhou Xian can kill everyone in the Li Palace, the more he kills the more trouble he will have. You might not know, but the water race of the underworld river and the cultivators of the land of the underworld have always abided by an ancient agreement: mutual non-aggression. Even after Bai Qi took control of the underworld, he also obediently abided by this ancient agreement. If I have to fight and not fight back." Yu Qianzhou suddenly turned his head and said. The Snow Emperor pondered for a moment and said, "No one saw you kill the Crown Prince Li Zhong. If they find you, you can continue to deny it. That ancient agreement is not only effective against the cultivators of the land, it is also effective against the water race of the underworld river. They don't have any evidence, so they won't dare to do anything to you." Yu Qianzhou was silent for a long time. After a long time he slowly asked, "I see that you all seem to be very secretive about the water race of the underworld river. I heard that the water race of the underworld river has a terrifying existence that is even more powerful than the emperor of the underworld. Is this true? If it's convenient, why don't you tell me so I can broaden my horizons?" "There should be, but it's a pity that I haven't seen it in so many years in the underworld." The Snow Emperor's palm that was lightly slapping the table suddenly stopped moving. With a solemn expression he recalled, "Many years ago, I once heard someone say that there is a mysterious cave in the depths of the underworld river. It is a forbidden area for the water race of the underworld river, called the Netherworld Divine Palace. It is said that there is a demigod expert that is almost like a god inside, silently protecting the water race of the underworld river." As for the specifics, the person who told this story was also not clear. He also heard it from others. Hearing this, Yu Qianzhou was slightly shocked. This underworld was indeed an unfathomable place. There was actually an expert that was almost like a god hidden in it. For a moment he had no choice but to suppress the rash killing intent in his heart. Chapter 1031. The pitch-black night sky began to sprinkle the fine, salt-like snow again. It was not as spectacular as the feather-like snowflakes from before, but the rustling sound on the ground seemed to be louder, as if there were countless ants crawling on the ground. Yu Qianzhou stretched out his hand and waved it outside the pavilion. He smiled and said, "I wanted to enjoy the scenery on both sides of the Styx River, but now it seems that in order to avoid conflict with them, I can only borrow the path from Big Brother's Great Snow Mountain." "That's right. You know that you can't do it, but you still do it. The one who suffers is still you." The Snow Emperor heaved a sigh of relief, stood up and walked to his side. He smiled and said, "When are you leaving? I will personally send you out of the Great Snow Mountain." "Let's go now. There's no need to send me off. It's too ostentatious to let the Snow Emperor send me off. I want to keep a low profile. Maybe it'll be convenient for me to seek refuge here one day." As Yu Qianzhou spoke, he chuckled with some pride. He crossed his hands behind his back and was about to step out of the pavilion when he suddenly turned his head and said, "I want to ask Big Brother a question. If one day I get into a conflict with the Heartless Palace's Wang Qing, who will you help?" The Snow Emperor was speechless. After hesitating for a while he said awkwardly, "I'm afraid I'll have to disappoint you. If there's any conflict between the two of you, I won't help you, but I won't help him either. I can only help neither side." Yu Qianzhou smiled and walked out of the pavilion. He stepped on the snow on the ice cliff and strode toward the ice palace. If the Snow Emperor said that he would help him, he would be on his guard. After all, Wang Qing saved the life of the family of 3 years ago. His kindness was more than what he was now. It was obvious that the Snow Emperor was trying to fool him. Now it seemed that the Snow Emperor's character was not too bad. He was naturally relieved. The Snow Emperor thought that Yu Qianzhou would be unhappy. Instead he saw a knowing smile on his face. He didn't seem to be offended at all. He was startled at first, but then he understood the reason. He couldn't help but shake his head and smile bitterly. He thought that this kid was too cunning. But at the same time it made him feel a little relieved. From this point, it could be seen that at least this kid would not be killed so easily, and the possibility of finding the fire spirit was greater. On the ice cliff, Yu Qianzhou, Zhou Xian, Ding Xiang and Xin Yu all came out. Ding Xiang took out a flying shuttle, and the four of them cupped their hands towards the Snow Emperor, saying, "Farewell." The Snow Emperor regained his expressionless face, and nodded slightly with his hands clasped behind his back. The four of them quickly boarded the flying shuttle and Ding Xiang quickly drove it into the sky. Ding-ling-ling-ling sounds came from below. The few of them looked back and faintly saw the mother and daughter standing beside the Snow Empress. In the blink of an eye, they were far away and nothing could be seen clearly. In a certain room on the 22nd floor of the Immortal Realm's Heavenly Chamber of Commerce, there was a rare absence of the clattering sounds of mahjong. Several women sat around an empty mahjong table, discussing the matter of Xianxia's trip to the underworld to help the fourth prince of the Li Palace's water tribe leap through the Dragon Gate. Words of surprise, envy and worry filled the entire room. In reality, this legendary story had already spread throughout the entire Immortal Realm, but the women who were passionate about playing mahjong did not know about it. It was Nongzhu who came to tell them the news. However, when Nongzhu discovered that the mahjong tiles on the table were actually carved from her beloved purple bamboo from the Southern Sea's purple bamboo forest, she let out a crazy roar. As a result, Wei Chuanqiu came to reprimand her. Nongzhu lost her temper the moment she met him, and could only resentfully confiscate the mahjong tiles that the women were playing with. Coming. Zi hurriedly rushed into the room with a wooden box in her arms. She placed it on the table where the women were sitting and opened the lid. The wooden box was opened and a pile of small pieces of white jade fell out with a rustling sound. Putting away the empty wooden box, Zi excitedly patted her chest to show off. I used the jade to make a new set of mahjong tiles to make up for my master's impulsiveness. Everyone can continue. The women took the white jade mahjong tiles and examined them carefully. They discovered that the size and the carvings on them were exactly the same as the ones made by Xianxia. The cut surface was smooth and the corners were polished smooth. Could be seen that Zi had really put in a lot of effort. An even clearer clattering sound rang out. It might have something to do with the material of the mahjong tiles. The four women continued to surround the mahjong tiles, but they did not seem to be as passionate as before. They all seemed to be absent-minded. Hibiscus took out a whiteboard and worriedly frowned. I heard that the underworld is very dangerous. I wonder if it's safe for him there. Bang. Zi took out two whiteboards and touched Hibiscus tiles. She angrily threw out a tile and said, "That big swindler trapped us here, but he went to such an exciting place like the underworld to play. He must be up to no good again." As she spoke, she pointed at the women and said, "That big swindler is too fickle. Maybe when he comes back he will bring another sister who can make up a table for you. Do you believe me?" The 100-charm beauty who was watching from outside the mahjong table shook her head and said, "He was right not to bring us. With our cultivation we won't be of much help to the underworld. Instead we will be a burden to him." The women nodded in agreement. Only Zi said indignantly, "You guys only know how to protect him. Just you wait. It would be best if he can bring 3 of us back at once. We can make up 2 mahjong tables and you guys will be happy." The women looked at each other. Yan Yu, who was sitting on Ziyi's hand, threw out a tile and jokingly said to Ziyi, "Why don't we wait for him to come back? We will persuade him to take you into his room as well." Ziyi's hand, which was reaching out to grab the tile, froze. Her pretty face instantly turned red. She was no longer the naive Ziyi. She had mingled with these women for a long time. In addition, she had always been curious and didn't feel ashamed to ask questions. She understood the relationship between men and women very well. How could she not know what it meant to take someone into her room? She felt shy, but she still said with a strong voice, "Only you guys like that big swindler. You even want to be taken into his room. I don't care." She clearly had a good tile in her hand, but she casually threw it out. This caused the 100-charm beauty who was watching from behind to laugh so hard that she trembled. After being laughed by her, Zi, who was staring at the tile, immediately reacted. Her face turned as red as an apple. She sat there embarrassedly and didn't say anything. According to her personality, if it was any other time, she would definitely say that she had made a mistake and snatched the tile back. However, she was afraid of exposing her thoughts in front of everyone, so she could only pretend that nothing had happened. However, the 100-charm beauty was secretly playing tricks and told the other 3 women about it. Immediately, the table burst into laughter. The 100-charm beauty pressed her hands on Ziyi's shoulders and laughed secretly. "If he takes the initiative to take you into his room, will you agree?" "He dares." Ziyi suddenly stood up and glared at them. She was a little angry, but she couldn't say no. She could only fiercely say, "If he dares to take me in, I dare to agree." See how I deal with him in the future. I won't protect him like you guys, humph. Then she pushed the tiles on the table and shouted, I'm not playing anymore. I'm not playing anymore. My good mood has been ruined by you guys. She turned around and quickly ran out with a red face. Her previous enthusiasm for playing mahjong was completely gone. She could only hear a disgusting laughter coming from behind her. In the back garden of the External Affairs Grand Commander's residence of the Immortal Realm of Bliss. Although Mu Tianjia was already married and no longer participated in the affairs of the Immortal Realm, she still kept an eye on all the news in the Immortal Realm. After marrying Wu Xiong, due to Wu Xiong's authority, she was able to obtain more information than before. She didn't become isolated from the outside world just because she stayed indoors. In the pavilion in the back garden, Wu Xiong's subordinate left after delivering a jade archive. Mu Tianjiao carefully read through the information in the jade archive, then put it away in her storage bracelet. Every day at this time, a jade archive would be delivered punctually. As long as it wasn't something taboo, the daily news of the three realms would be detailed in the jade archive. Naturally, there was no need to worry about the source of the news from the Immortal Palace. Mu Tianjiao would store the jade archive after she finished reading it. It wasn't because she had any desire to win, but because she believed that since she was already married, she should try her best to maintain a common topic with her man and maintain their relationship. Therefore, it was necessary for her to pay attention to the happenings in the three realms every day. After reading the information in the Jade Archive, Mu Tianjiao sat there in silence for a long time. Not long after, steady and familiar footsteps could be heard from outside the garden. She quickly stood up, walked out of the pavilion and walked along the small path to welcome them. In reality, as long as Wu Xiong was still within the Immortal Realm of Bliss, he would return to his residence around this time every day. As expected, Wu Xiong saw that familiar smile as soon as he stepped through the garden gates. The two of them exchanged greetings, then walked into the pavilion hand in hand and sat down. This had become a habit for the two of them. Every time this happened, they would sit down and chat for a while. Similarly, every time this happened, Mu Tianjiao would start the conversation with words that warmed Wu Xiong's heart. However, today Mu Tianjiao seemed a little absent-minded. Wu Xiong's gaze flickered as he studied her face. He smiled faintly and asked, "Is there something on your mind, madam?" Mu Tianjiao raised her head and looked at him for a while. She bit her lip and said, "I heard that my father has gone to the underworld. I wonder if the great commander knows about this?" Wu Xiong wanted to deny it and say that he didn't know. However, after a pause, he smiled bitterly and said, "So that's what it is. Actually, my father-in-law has spoken to me about this before. I didn't approve of him going, but he insisted on going. Given his status and the fact that he's not an outsider, I couldn't stop him by force. Before he left, my father-in-law specifically told me not to tell you about this. I've been hesitating on whether or not I should tell you. Since you already know, it saves me a lot of trouble. I know my father's temperament better than anyone else. I can imagine that he's determined to go." Mu Tianjiao's face was full of worry as she said, "But I'm really worried about his safety." Wu Xiong laughed heartily and said, "My father-in-law only said that he wanted to go to the underworld to see if he could expand the Four Links Chamber of Commerce's business channels. I don't think there will be any danger. Besides, before he left, I told him that if he encountered any trouble, he could report my name to the Army of the Dark Underworld. I have some connections with the higher-ups of the Army of the Dark Underworld. It shouldn't be a problem for me to resolve some problems. So you don't have to worry too much. There shouldn't be any danger." Chapter 1032. As for the fact that Mu Bing had gone to deal with Yu Qianchou, he wouldn't tell Mu Tianjiao. Unexpectedly, Mu Tianjiao said worriedly, "I saw the news earlier that Yu Qianchou happened to help the Styx River tribe transform into a dragon. I'm worried that father is targeting Yu Qianchou. If that's the case, it'll be troublesome." Wu Xiong's eyebrows twitched unconsciously. He couldn't help but say something he didn't want to say. "It seems that madam is very concerned about that Yu Qianchou." Mu Tianjiao was startled. She was a smart person and knew that some of her words had aroused Wu Xiong's disgust. This kind of disgust was a common problem for men, but it was fatal and very hurtful. She immediately shook her head and said, "It can't be said to be concerned. It's just that when the Four Links Chamber of Commerce was in danger, Yu Qianchou once helped us. He can be considered as a former friend of mine. Father's actions on the day of the wedding have always made me feel very guilty." Although she was smart and wanted to draw a line between her and Yu Qianqiu that couldn't be crossed, she didn't know that in order to vent his anger, her father had once fabricated a story that didn't exist and sold her out. As a result, her words sounded exceptionally harsh to Wu Xiong's ears. He could hear that she was trying to cover something up. Any man would find it hard to accept that his own woman was thinking about another man behind his back. Wu Xiong's face darkened as he said, "But why did I hear that Yu Qianqiu once pursued you? Commander, where did this come from? Who's deliberately slandering me?" Mu Tianjiao asked in astonishment. An almost imperceptible trace of panic flashed across her face. It wasn't true that Yu Qianqiu had pursued her, but it was true that she had pursued Yu Qianqiu. As a wife, she was naturally afraid that such a thing would be known by her husband. However, thinking that only she and Yu Qianqiu knew about it based on her understanding of Yu Qianqiu, he would not say such a thing. It would not be good for him, so she immediately calmed down. However, Wu Xiong was silently paying attention to the other party's reaction after hearing these words. When he saw that this woman, who had always been calm in the face of trouble, was actually a little flustered, his heart immediately turned cold. However, when he remembered that her body had never betrayed him, his face instantly changed into a smile. He got up and walked over to hold her hand. Suddenly, he hugged her by the waist and said with a smile, "How could your husband not know that someone is deliberately slandering and driving a wedge between us? I have already executed that scoundrel. Madam, you don't have to take it to heart." With that said, he carried her directly to the courtyard where the two of them lived. Mu Tianjiao's words were perfunctory, but she also saw a trace of haze flash in Wu Xiong's eyes, and her body couldn't help but stiffen. In the bedroom, it was common for a couple to make love, but Wu Xiong tore off her clothes very rudely. There was no foreplay at all. Mu Tianjiao gritted her teeth and endured it. After that, Wu Xiong suddenly remembered that he had something to deal with, so he said goodbye, put on his clothes and left straight away. She didn't know whether it was true or not. Mu Tianjiao, who was naked and lying on the bed, bit her lips and said nothing. Her white body was red and swollen. She could feel that he was venting almost crazily, as if he did not treat her as a human at all. His usual gentle and passionate caresses turned into fierce and heavy pinching, and the swelling on her chest and some parts of her body did not disappear for a long time. Her powerless gaze suddenly fell on her dressing table opposite her. The forever and earth conjoined sculpture that Yu Qianqiu had given her previously was still there, and it had disappeared. Mu Tianjiao's eyes immediately flowed with tears and she murmured, "In the end you still took it seriously and cared about it. If you marry a chicken, follow the chicken, and if you marry a dog, follow the dog. Why don't you believe me?" When Wu Xiong sent someone to propose marriage, she did not even think about it and wanted to reject it. This was because she had long understood that if she married a man of heavenly status, even if she, a woman on earth, could leap up a tree and become a golden phoenix, the difference in status would be like heaven and earth, and she would have to live cautiously in the future. Her self-esteem could not stand that. However, for the sake of the Four Links Chamber of Commerce, she still agreed. She believed that with her wisdom she would be able to maintain a good relationship between them. However, the thing she worried about the most had still happened. Unfortunately, there was no medicine for regret in this world. She had originally married the other party because of his power, so naturally she valued his power. For the sake of the Four Links Chamber of Commerce and her father, she could not resist at all. She did not even have the right to refute. Otherwise, the consequences would not be something she could bear. A flying shuttle rapidly traversed the dusky sky, and there were 7 or 8 people standing on it. This was not the first time Mu Bing had come to the underworld. He had come here to do business before, but it had always been on a small scale. He had never gone as deep as he did today. This was the first time he had heard of Twilight City. As for why he wanted to go to Twilight City, it was because the people around him had determined that Yu Qianqiu, who had broken into the underworld, should have gone to Twilight City. He originally came for Yu Qianqiu, so naturally he also wanted to go to Twilight City. Moreover, after knowing that Twilight City was a place where some high-level sects in the immortal world did business in the underworld, he felt that with his current status, how could he not know about Twilight City? Of course he had to go and take a look. Is there still no news from Twilight City? Mu Bing stood in the middle of the flying shuttle with his hands behind his back, and asked the people standing in front of him with a lofty aura. In order to make things go smoothly for him in the underworld, Wu Xiong had secretly greeted some people in the underworld. When Mu Bing entered the underworld with the 2 early great immortal experts recruited by the 4 Links Chamber of Commerce, there were already 5 underworld experts waiting for him. The 5 people were from 2 gangs, dressed in what seemed to be some of the underworld's rogue cultivators. Among them, there were 2 people who were serious in speech and manner with a military momentum, and all of them were early underworld venerable. Among the other 3, 2 of them were late underworld venerable, and one of them had reached early underworld emperor. Although this lineup was not very strong in the underworld, it was still strong. However, when the 5 people saw Mu Bing, they all expressed their attitude and said that they would listen to his orders. Mu Bing was not a fool. Naturally, he understood that these people were secretly sent by Wuxia to help him. Although he did not point it out, he still accepted it as a matter of course. According to the calculation of the distance, they should have already arrived at Twilight City, but Twilight City said that they have not seen them yet. I guess they might have been delayed by something on the way. One of the 2 people replied while the other person was driving the flying shuttle. Mu Bing frowned and thought for a moment, then changed into a kind attitude and asked a skinny old man with a goatee next to him, "Mr. Dong, do you think it is possible that they did not go to Twilight City at all but went to other places?" The reason why he was so polite to the old man with the goatee was because this person had the highest cultivation in the group, early underworld emperor. Although he may not have the power of his son-in-law, but his cultivation was similar to his son-in-law's early immortal emperor, so naturally he was more respectful. The skinny old man stroked his beard and laughed. That is not necessarily true. Since they are going upstream along the Styx River, they must pass through the Great Snow Mountain. Then he waved his hand and pointed to the side. Before Mr. Mu came, we have already sent people to set up surveillance on the land route. As long as they leave the Styx River, they will enter our sight. According to the current situation, they may have broken into the Great Snow Mountain and angered the Snow Emperor and Snow Empress. They are already dead. Mu Bing looked in the direction of the old man's finger and found that they were flying over a vast white mountain range. Then he realized that it should be the Great Snow Mountain that the old man was talking about. He couldn't help but murmur to himself, if this is the case, then it is really convenient for him. The skinny old man's eyes flickered slightly, then he smiled and said, "Although we are ordered to follow Mr. Mu's command this time, we don't know what the matter is. We don't know why the higher-ups ordered us to keep an eye on you, Xianxia. Can Mr. Mu tell us?" Mu Bing's face changed slightly, then he said, "Mr. Dong is too impatient, I will let you know when the time comes." He also knew that Xianxia was now involved with the Immortal Emperor. If the details were leaked before the matter was completed, he was afraid that it would cause big trouble if the matter was exposed. "I am only following orders. I don't want to ask about anything, I just feel that it is a little strange." The skinny Mr. Dong stared at Mu Bing and smiled. Although this Xianxia's cultivation is not that great, his reputation is not small. Especially since he carried the decree of the Golden Emperor when he traveled, it is already known to everyone. I can't think of anyone in the immortal world who would dare to have any ideas about him. However, I heard that during Mr. Mu's daughter's wedding, Mr. Mu and this Xianxia did not seem to be on good terms. I wonder if this matter has anything to do with it? Mu Bing was slightly angry, but he didn't dare to say anything. He only smiled non-committally. The skinny old man saw that Mu Bing didn't want to say anything, so he didn't mind. He waved his hand and smiled. "Mr. Mu doesn't need to take it seriously, I was just making a wild guess." Then he looked to the side with a smile, and after a while he suddenly made a sound of surprise. He waved his hand in the direction of the Great Snow Mountain and said, "Slow down and fly, wait and see who it is." The few people followed his gaze and saw a faint stream of light flying over from the depths of the Great Snow Mountain. The flying shuttle they were on immediately slowed down. Not long after, Mr. Dong, who had the highest cultivation, was the first to determine what it was. He frowned and said, "It's actually another flying shuttle. Normal people don't dare to enter the Great Snow Mountain, and those who can travel with the Snow Empress have high cultivation. They also don't need a flying shuttle, so who could it be?" Under their intentional slowing down, the 2 flying shuttles quickly approached. In fact, the people who passed through the Great Snow Mountain were none other than Xianxia and his group. They also wanted to see who was on the flying shuttle that was flying slowly in front of them. Song Yun Exen, who had the highest cultivation, swept a glance at the few people on the flying shuttle and immediately found a familiar person. He was stunned and said, "Wu Bing. Why is he here?" Mu Bing? Yu Qianqiu, who was watching with narrowed eyes, was also stunned. With his cultivation, he couldn't clearly see who was standing on the flying shuttle. He couldn't help but turn his head and ask, "You mean Wu Xiong's father-in-law Mu Bing?" Chapter 1033. There was no need for Xian to answer. The distance between the two flying shuttles had rapidly shortened. He saw Mu Bing in the middle of the group at a glance, and the other party naturally saw him as well. Mu Bing was stunned at first. Obviously, he did not expect to meet Yu Qianqiu under such circumstances. After he reacted, he sneered again and again. It was as if he had worn out iron shoes in fruitless search, only to find what he had found without even looking for it. Yu Qianqiu raised his eyebrows. He looked at Xianxia beside him and then at Mu Bing, who had a sneer on his face. The scene of him being humiliated in Wu Xiong's mansion in Paradise Wonderland replayed in his mind. He really did not expect that the two protagonists would actually be in the netherworld. His slightly cold gaze finally locked onto Mu Bing. Back then, it was reasonable for Xianxia to humiliate him. After all, the two were enemies. It would be strange if there was no conflict. However, he never expected that Mu Bing would jump out as an ungrateful character and ruthlessly trample on his face in front of everyone. He was at a loss for what to do and became the laughingstock of the immortal world for a while. From then on, Yu Qianqiu regarded Mu Bing as a dead man with no room for redemption. "I didn't expect to meet sect leader Mu here." Xianxia cupped his hands at the other party and glanced at the others. His words and actions had already elevated a small chamber of commerce president to a sect leader. Mu Bing now indeed had this qualification. He had thousands of subordinates and was no longer the small chamber of commerce that only had a few people and could go bankrupt at any time. "Greetings, Master Xiangyun." Mu Bing's eyes moved away from Yu Qianqiu and smiled at Xianxia in return. "So you are sect leader Mu of the Four Links Chamber of Commerce. Nice to meet you." Ding Xiang smiled and took the initiative to cup his hands. "I am Hidden Dragon Villa's elder Ding Xiang." He had naturally heard of the conflict between Mu Bing and Yu Qianqiu. Although Yu Qianqiu had saved his life before, for him, it was not worth offending Mu Bing, the Immortal Palace External Affairs Commander behind Mu Bing for Yu Qianqiu. "Greetings, Elder Ding." Mu Bing hurriedly returned the greeting. To him, the Hidden Dragon Manor was one of the top sects in the immortal world. Although he had never come into contact with them, it was inevitable that he would have to rely on them in the future to develop his own forces. The skinny old man beside him cupped his fists and said with a smile, "I've long heard of the great name of Heartless Palace's chief priest, Priest Xianxia. A few days ago, I even heard that Priest Xianxia had single-handedly deterred the water race of the Netherworld River from making any reckless moves. He had long wanted to see his true appearance, but he didn't expect that he would be lucky enough to see him today. Nice to meet you. This old man is Dong Shunlai. Mr. Dong, you flatter me." Xianxia clenched his fists slightly. He could tell that the other party was an expert from the Netherworld. He didn't dare to be too careless. After all, this was the Netherworld, not the immortal world. Dong Shunlai had already observed the people on the flying shuttle. One was Firmament Cloud Xen, one was Ding Xiang, and one was from the Styx River's water tribe. Since Firmament Cloud Xen was present, then the identity of the other person was self-evident. However, he still smiled and cupped his fists politely. "May I know your name, friend?" "Well said." Yu Qianqiu returned the greeting. "This one is Yu Qianqiu." Dong Shunlai dragged out the last syllable with a deep meaning. He looked at Mu Bing with a smile as if asking, "Now that we've found the person, what should we do?" The people on the flying shuttle all stared at Yu Qianqiu. Yu Qianqiu couldn't see through the other party's strength. After replying, he stood there expressionlessly. Just as he was about to secretly ask Firmament Cloud Xan about it, Mu Bing couldn't stand the sight of a little tramp like him mingling with experts. He immediately sneered, "Some people don't know how to weigh themselves. They're clearly a scoundrel who's not worth a fart. Instead of hiding in their nest and struggling at death's door, they came out to court death. They really can't be any more despicable." The atmosphere at the scene froze. Everyone could tell that he was talking about Yu Qianqiu. Firmament Cloud Xan frowned slightly. He had been with Yu Qianqiu for a while and knew that this guy had a crazy ruthlessness in his bones. If he was forced into a corner, he would do anything. He was worried that Yu Qianqiu would start a fight in a fit of anger. At that time, he would be in the most difficult position. He couldn't not protect Yu Qianqiu, and if he protected Yu Qianchou he was afraid that he would offend Wu Xiong who was behind Mu Bing. He couldn't help but feel a little sullen. He felt that Mu Bing was too arrogant and didn't care about his face at all. Dong Shunlai glanced at Firmament Cloud Exon and chuckled twice with a fake smile. He looked at Yu Qianchou with a mocking expression. He wanted to see how this guy who had caused so much commotion would deal with it. Elder Ding, Yu Qianchou said indifferently, someone is mocking you. Don't you want to beat him up? Son of a bitch. Ding Xiang was stunned. He didn't think that he would get hit while lying down. What did this have to do with him? How could he implicate others like this? He naturally knew that Mu Bing was talking about Yu Qianchou and not him. His expression immediately twitched and he smiled bitterly. That can't be. Unexpectedly, the one who was being scolded didn't react, but the one who was scolding him flew into a rage. How dare you? Mu Bing pointed at him and shouted, Yu Qianchou, you cowardly bandit, how dare you frame me? You're indeed a famous shameless scoundrel in the immortal world. If you have the ability, don't hide and rely on others to protect you. So what if I'm a scoundrel? You think you're worthy of criticizing me? Why don't you think about what you relied on to be able to have such an ostentatious appearance today? Yu Qianchou swallowed the vicious words that were on the tip of his tongue. He originally wanted to say that Ding Xiang only relied on his daughter to sleep with someone else in exchange for glory and splendor. However, he still admired Mu Tianjiao's character and couldn't bear to tarnish such a woman. Secondly, with his current strength, it was really unwise to involve Wu Xiong in scolding him. Blatantly slapping Wu Xiong's face was no different from slapping the Immortal Palace's face. After all, Wu Xiong was the external affairs commander of the Immortal Palace. He stared at him with disdain and sneered, I don't know who was the one who begged a scoundrel like me for help. If it wasn't for this scoundrel, your 4 Links Chamber of Commerce would have long been razed to the ground by the 8 Pagoda Chamber of Commerce. If it wasn't for this scoundrel who risked his life to help you in the ruins of God, your 4 Links Chamber of Commerce would have long collapsed. Would you still be able to strut around like you do today? You ungrateful ingrate, I don't even want to scold you, yet you still shamelessly run out to be scolded. What the hell do you think you are? Who do you think you are? You. Mu Bing pointed at Yu Qianchou with a flushed face. He was so angry that he was trembling. After holding it in for a long time he could only say, You're courting death. But just you? Did you eat shit or did your head grow on your butt? What kind of bullshit is this? Yu Qianchou sneered and pointed at him with disdain. Didn't you scold me for being a cowardly bandit? Fine. Then I'll play with you. I don't need anyone's protection and you don't need anyone's protection either. If you have the guts, then come out and fight me one-on-one. Let's see who's courting death. Do you dare? Do you have the guts? As soon as these words came out, everyone looked at each other with the people around them. Although Mu Bing had the cultivation of a late-stage exalted immortal, no one dared to guarantee that he was a match for Yu Qianchou. After all, the sect leader of the 4 islands of Lake Light was also a late-stage exalted immortal, but 2 of them were still killed by Yu Qianchou. However, these words were too vicious. Mu Bing was almost provoked to jump out by Yu Qianchou. However, if he really had to face life and death, he didn't have the guts. With a good son-in-law as a backer, there were still good days ahead of him. How could he take this risk? After trembling with anger, he finally endured it and said stubbornly, For the sake of the Immortal Emperor's decree, I'll let you go for now. Bullshit. You're just a chicken and a dog in my eyes. Killing you doesn't even need to expend any effort. Do I need you to let me go? I've seen shameless people before, but I've never seen someone as shameless as you. Yu Qianchou rolled up his sleeves and waved his hand saying, If you have the guts, let's sign a life and death contract. No matter who dies, they asked for it. After that, no one will be willing to blame the other. Mu Bing, if you don't dare to accept the challenge today and scold me, I'll return all of it. I'll let everyone see who's the one hiding and relying on others to protect him. These words immediately put Mu Bing in a difficult position. He gritted his teeth, waiting for the people around him to give him a way out of this embarrassing situation. At this moment, everyone could see that Yu Qianchou was deliberately provoking him. His purpose couldn't be more obvious. Obviously, he was very confident that he could take this opportunity to kill Mu Bing. Songyun Exon was someone who had seen Yu Qianchou in action, so he knew that Mu Bing was no match for Yu Qianchou. In fact, the unluckiest person here was him. Regardless of whether Yu Qianchou or Mu Bing died, it wouldn't benefit him. Needless to say, Yu Qianchou's life was temporarily linked to his. As for Mu Bing, if he didn't stop him and he was killed by Yu Qianchou, who knew if Wu Xiong would blame it on him? Sect Master Mu, I don't care if you want to settle your grudge with Yu Qianchou, but I hope that you can give this old man face and push this matter to after the Immortal Emperor's wedding. After all, this old man is carrying a heavy responsibility and I can't just sit by and watch. You know this. Songyun Exen had to give Mu Bing a way out of this embarrassing situation. Although Dong Laishun, who had been watching from the sidelines for a long time, came here on orders, the reason why he didn't speak was because he didn't want to be foolishly betrayed. At this point he already knew why Mu Bing came to the Netherworld. He immediately followed Songyun Exion's words and chuckled, Sect Master Mu, since Exalted Song has spoken to this point, it won't be right if you don't give him face. You have a sharp tongue, you'll be crying later. Mu Bing threw out a ruthless remark, then turned around and shouted, Let's go. Although he left the stage, his face was still livid. He had lost a lot of face today. Dong Laishun smiled and cupped his hands at Songyun Exen and the others, then quickly left in the blink of an eye. Yu Qianchou stared at the flying shuttle in front of him and sneered, Elder Ding. Follow them. Chapter 1034. This. Ding Xiang immediately felt a toothache. This guy still didn't give up. He couldn't help but look at Songyun Exen for help. To be able to cultivate to this level, he didn't want to get involved in the grudge between Yu Qianchou and Mu Bing. Although Yu Qianchou saved his life, there were many ways to repay the favor. There was no need to throw his life away again. If he angered Wu Xiong, there was no guarantee that the hidden dragon manor wouldn't abandon him at a critical moment. Yu Qianchou, if it was any other time, I would be more than happy to see you and Mu Bing fight to the death. Grey Cloud Exen frowned and said in a low voice, But now? Everyone is well aware of it, so there's no need for me to say anything more. Don't say that I didn't warn you. Even if you kill Mu Bing, Wu Xiong won't find trouble with you for the time being out of respect for the Immortal Emperor. However, after the Immortal Emperor's wedding, Wu Xiong will have 10,000 ways to make you wish you were dead. Damn. Isn't this bullshit? Wu Xiong still has a chance after this? I'm afraid your Songyun Exen will be the first to come after me. Yu Qianchou rolled his eyes on the spot. In reality, he also knew that he couldn't kill Mu Bing in front of everyone. Not to mention that there were a lot of people stopping him. Even if he wanted to kill him, he couldn't do it in front of everyone. If the news was leaked, even if Wu Xiong wanted to save his face, the world commerce would be the first to suffer. After all, the Immortal Emperor's decree was given to him. It could only protect him temporarily and not the people of the world commerce. Unless he could kill everyone present to silence them, it was a bit unrealistic. In short, if he wanted to kill Mu Bing now, he couldn't leave any evidence. As long as Wu Xiong didn't have any evidence, he would be wary of the Immortal Emperor and wouldn't dare to casually touch the world commerce. Otherwise, with the Immortal Emperor's power and tactics, he would probably turn a blind eye to it. There's no hurry to kill him now. Yu Qianchou stared at the disappearing flowing light and narrowed his eyes. I just feel that it's a bit strange. This guy has Wu Xiong's support in the immortal world and has plenty of opportunities to earn money. Why would he suddenly come to the underworld? There's no need to go through so much trouble just to deal with me. Furthermore, he had mingled with the people from the netherworld. Presumably, the cultivation of the people around him was not low. This matter must have something to do with Wu Xiong. Otherwise, Mu Bing wouldn't be able to command the people of the underworld. Maybe there was some secret behind this matter. What if Wu Xiong did something shameful behind the Immortal Emperor's back? My premonitions have always been accurate. Aren't you interested in knowing? Elder Ding, follow me. I promise I won't do anything. He was speaking from the bottom of his heart. He did suspect that Mu Bing was up to something. However, Yu Qianchou had wronged Mu Bing. Even in his wildest dreams, Yu Qianchou would never have imagined that Mu Bing had spent so much effort to come after him. What would Yu Qianchou think if he knew? What if Wu Xiong did something shameful behind the Immortal Emperor's back? Although the reason was a bit far-fetched, Grey Cloud Exen and Ding Xiang couldn't help but feel their hearts palpitate. If they really happened to have something on Wu Xiong, then it would be very useful at a critical moment. When Ding Xiang saw Grey Cloud Exen nod slightly in a non-committal manner, he immediately drove the flying shuttle and chased after him. Sect Master. Before the subordinate could finish speaking, Mu Bing immediately shouted, "Shut up." His heart was filled with hatred. Joining the Four Links Chamber of Commerce halfway was just joining halfway. If his disciple Nan Tianlong was present just now, he would definitely protect him and not embarrass him like this. That disciple's expression stiffened, but he still braced himself and said, "It seems like they're catching up again." Although his cultivation was a level higher than Mu Bing's, Mu Bing had a good daughter and found a powerful man, so he could only compromise. Oh. Mu Bing suddenly turned around. Judging from the vague outline of the people, they were indeed catching up again. Deng Xiang's expression slightly changed. He was actually quite afraid of death. If he had a bit of courage, he wouldn't have made a fuss and had to have his daughter come out to support him. Although he could use his connections to intimidate others, if someone really wanted to use force against him, he would immediately be afraid. The others also turned around to look. Dong Lai Shun slightly narrowed his eyes and said, "Sect Master Mu, if I'm not wrong, the purpose of your visit this time is to take the life of that Yu Qianchou." Mu Bing swallowed his saliva. Now he was a little regretful that he came to the netherworld to find Yu Qianchou. At worst, he could just wait until the Immortal Emperor's wedding. At that time there would be many ways to deal with him. He tilted his head and smiled awkwardly. "Since Mr. Dong has already guessed it, I won't hide it anymore." That's right. They have already caught up. I wonder if Mr. Dong has any way to solve the current crisis? Crisis? Dong Lai Shun glanced at him with a slightly disdainful expression. He turned back to look at the two meditation cultivators with military aura and laughed. "Presumably with Sect Master Mu's ability, you still can't mobilize the people of the Dark Army to help. It seems like it's for the sake of your son-in-law Wuxiong." As expected of the External Affairs Commander of the Immortal Palace. "I've never heard of him having dealings with our great king. I didn't think that they would be secretly communicating." He then looked at Mu Bing and said, "So it seems that Commander Wu is secretly supporting you in taking action against Yu Qianchou. However, I'm a little curious. Is Commander Wu not afraid of the Immortal Emperor's thunderous rage if the news is leaked? You should know that Yu Qianchou carries the Immortal Emperor's decree with him." Mu Bing's expression immediately became ugly. He didn't know where this Dong Lai Shun came from, but he knew that the two meditation cultivators with the pseudonyms of Black Big and Black Two were indeed people of the Dark Army. Before coming here, Wuxiong had told him that the Dark Army would send these two people to be his contacts. If he really encountered any trouble that he couldn't solve, he could ask these two people to contact the people of the Dark Army for help. Mu Bing's expression was ugly. "I don't think Mr. Dong will leak this matter." "Of course not. I came here on the Great King's orders. If I messed up, how would I report back?" Dong Lai Shun smiled and shook his head. "Sect Master Mu's two subordinates have a higher cultivation than Sect Master Mu. As the Sect Master, do you think you can order them around?" Although the two people that Mu Bing brought with him didn't like hearing this, they still had to endure it. Not to mention that the person who said this was an early-stage Netherworld Emperor. He wasn't someone they could afford to offend. Seeing that Dong Lai Shun was getting further and further away, Mu Bing looked at the flying shuttle that was getting closer and closer and said with some anxiety, "When I was recruiting talents, I recruited them. It's not strange that their cultivation is higher than mine. Mr. Dong, the most important thing right now is how to get rid of those people behind us. This Yu Qianchou is famous for being a madman and is capable of doing anything." No. Sect Master Mu is mistaken. The most important thing right now is to not let others know that you are targeting Yu Qianchou and that Great Commander Wuxiong is involved. This is something you are doing behind Great Commander Wuxiong's back." Dong Lai Shun smiled and waved his hand. Suddenly his hands grew longer. His palms shot out like ghostly claws and instantly grabbed the heads of the two subordinates that Mu Bing brought with him. Puff. Their brains splattered on the spot. The two didn't even have time to scream before they lost their lives. Their corpses were thrown out of the flying shuttle by the two withered arms. As a result, Mu Bing was so scared that his face turned pale. He retreated and said in a panic, What do you want to do?" Dong Lai Shun retracted his arms and his terrifying and sinister arms instantly returned to normal. He looked at Mu Bing and shook his head slightly. He finally understood why the king had sent him to do such a thing. This guy actually brought two people that he couldn't completely control. Sooner or later Wuxiong would be killed. At the same time, he also faintly guessed that the king and Wuxiong might have some secret that couldn't be exposed. Previously, when he guessed Mu Bing's intentions, he thought that the king had sent him to distract Ashy Cloud Messenger so that Mu Bing could find an opportunity to kill Yu Qianchou. This made him rather unhappy because he didn't have the slightest confidence in dealing with the Heartless Palace's 3 swords in 1 sword drawing style. Now it seemed that this wasn't the case at all. The main purpose was to prevent the situation from getting out of control. As for the secret between the king and Wuxia, that wasn't something that he should worry about. The king clearly trusted him by sending him to do this. If he went overboard and inquired about the secret that he shouldn't know, he would be courting death. But what made Dong Laishan feel strange was that if there really was a secret, why would Wuxia do such a stupid thing? Because the risk of exposing the relationship between the 2 sides was too great. If it was just to get rid of Xianxia, the king could have sent an expert to do it alone. There was no need to put Mu Bing in the middle. Because even if Jin Tai was unhappy, he wouldn't have the ability to intervene in the underworld. Protect me. Mu Bing hid behind Black 2, who was sent by the army of Onyx. Black 2 said expressionlessly, "Mr. Mu, don't panic. Mr. Dong has already discussed it with us before we made our move. He did the right thing. Those 2 people must be eliminated." You. Mu Bing looked at these people in horror. He suddenly felt like he had fallen into a wolf's den. Dong Laishan acted as if nothing had happened. Looking at the flying shuttle that was gradually catching up, he smiled and said, "Sect leader Mu is actually worrying too much. The Heartless Palace is under the control of others. Ashy Cloud Messenger doesn't have the guts to go against Great Commander Wuxia. According to our previous judgment, they were originally going to Twilight City. They were just continuing on their way. They shouldn't be chasing after us. But that Xianxia is protected by Ashy Cloud Messenger. It is indeed a troublesome matter. If we don't lure Ashy Cloud Messenger away, I'm afraid that we can't kill Xianxia. That 3-in-1 sword drawing style is really not something that anyone can block." Hearing this, Mu Bing gradually recovered from his fright. Thinking about how Wuxia had no reason to harm him, his courage immediately grew and he slowly asked, "If that's the case, does Mr. Dong have any way to resolve this?" If he didn't have scruples about Ashy Cloud Messenger, he would have already asked everyone to kill Xianxia. How could he have humiliated himself? Chapter 1035. Dong Laishan looked at the flying shuttle and smiled. With the protection of the ash-gray cloud letter, there's no good way. But we're not far from Twilight City. We'll see when we get there. There is always a way to get him away from Xianxia. Good. Then let him live for a few more days. Mu Bing gritted his teeth and clenched his fists. His resentment was not gone for a long time. Ding Xiang drove the flying shuttle and followed at a distance of nearly a kilometer. He did not widen the distance but did not get too close either. The 2 sides moved forward quickly, one in front and one behind. There was no surprise or danger along the way. After a full 5 days, as the flying shuttle in front slowly slowed down, Ding Xiang also slowed down. He looked back and said to them, "We have arrived at Twilight City." Needless to say, they had already seen the distant plains dotted with lights like the stars in the night sky. The area was not small, but for the underworld that was immersed in the night it seemed a bit different. Among them, except for Xianxia, everyone had been here before, so Xianxia looked around curiously. The flying shuttle carrying Mu Bing and the others had already dived into the waning light. The flying shuttle behind them was about to land when Xianxia shouted, "Wait!" Ding Xiang understood and stopped the flying shuttle in the air. Most people who came here for the first time would inevitably look at the environment of Twilight City curiously. Below was a huge city wall, crisscrossed rows of houses, and the lights shining through the windows were the little stars in the distance. There were few tall buildings in the city wall. Occasionally, a 3-story attic was already considered high. The seemingly disorderly but orderly streets were intertwined like a net. The strange thing was that most of the lights were lit in the rooms, and there were few illumination objects on the wide or narrow streets outside. In the center of the city, there was a square that wasn't small. In the middle of the square, there was a circular foundation that was 10 meters tall and nearly 100 meters tall. However, on the foundation, there was a huge snake statue that was also nearly 100 meters tall, towering into the night sky. Unfortunately, this snake-shaped sculpture was a broken stone sculpture. To be more precise, it was a statue with a snake's body and a human head. The lower half of the statue's body was supported by a snake's coiled tail. There was nothing above the shoulder. The reason why one could tell that the upper body was that of a woman was because there was a pair of large and plump breasts exposed to the air on the naked upper body. Further up, the shoulders and head were damaged for some unknown reason. The The flying shuttle they were on was not far from the giant statue. It looked like a tiny dot in comparison. Yu Qianchou stared at it for a long time and suddenly asked, Xinyu, what does this statue mean? Song Yunxin and Ding Xiang also looked at Xinyu. They also did not know why this statue was standing there. Xinyu said respectfully, I don't know what it means. It is said that when Twilight City was discovered, this broken statue was here, but no one knows why. Then why is it called Twilight City? Yu Qianchou continued to ask. Xinyu replied with a bitter smile, I don't know either. I don't know who first discovered this place. Anyway, the name Twilight City has been passed down for countless years, and no one can explain what it means. It's just a broken ruin. It doesn't matter what it is called. Why do you have to ask? Song Yunxin said impatiently. Yu Qianchou nodded in agreement. Just as he was about to say that they should find a place to rest, he suddenly heard the sound of crashing waves in the distance. It was coming from the direction the statue was facing. Yu Qianchou turned around and saw a strong wind blowing from afar. His clothes fluttered in the wind. He was sensitive to the humidity in the air and asked, Is there a lake in front? Ding Xiang laughed and said, It's not a lake. Not far from here is the Styx River. Twilight City is built on the bank of the Styx River. Jiu Yu added, The place directly opposite Twilight City is the widest basin of the Styx River. So that's how it is. Yu Qianchou nodded slightly and glanced at Twilight City. From time to time he could see people flying in from all directions, and he could also see people flying in all directions. His eyes finally fell on the exquisite giant statue. Although it was broken and had experienced countless years, it was still difficult to hide its vividness. The broken statue seemed to be using the whistling wind to tell something. Glory, sadness, or something else. Yu Qianchou had this feeling. He listened attentively, but he could not understand the language of the wind. It could only be understood but not expressed. However, he did not have such a high level of understanding, so he still got nothing. After a while, Yu Qianchou turned to look at Xian and Ding Xiang. He smiled and said, I think both of you have a place to stay here. Where do you think you should stay? Xian was silent. Ding Xiang glanced at him. He could imagine how awkward it would be to protect his enemy in front of his fellow disciples. He chuckled and said, If you don't mind, you can stay at my hidden dragon villa for the time being. After that, he drove the flying shuttle around the giant sculpture and flew diagonally forward. The hidden dragon villa's foothold in Twilight City occupied a whole street. The street was not long, perhaps it should be called an alley. Dozens of houses on both sides of the street were occupied by the people of the hidden dragon villa. It was unknown how many people lived there, but from the hundreds of people that Ding Xiang brought in front of the dragon transformation gate, it could be seen that there were at least more than 100 people. Elder Ding Xiang was sent by the hidden dragon mountain villa to guard this place. After he arranged for them to stay in a small stone house, he acted as if he had nothing to do with them. After exchanging some pleasantries with them, he said he had something to do and left. Even when Yu Qianchou asked him to send someone to check on the situation of Mu Bing and the others, he politely refused. In fact, he did not want to get involved with these people anymore. He did not get to eat meat and almost got himself into trouble. When they arrived at the destination, they naturally parted ways. Yu Qianchou was concerned about the location where Mu Bing and the others were staying. He could not stay idle and wanted to take Jiu Yu out for a walk. How could Xianxia let him run around? It was known that this was a place where killing was not against the law. He had no choice but to follow. The three of them went out and shuttled through the maze-like streets. Yu Qianchou looked around at the exotic stone buildings around him. In fact, the entire Twilight City was built with large and small stones. The shapes were similar. Although simple and elegant, it was a maze. The vicissitudes of life lingered on the streets. There were almost no pedestrians on the streets. Most of them were rising and falling in the air. After walking east and west for a few streets, even Xian and Jiu Yu lost their way. The three of them had to fly into the air to find the direction. Yu Qianchou looked around and finally found the place where Mu Bing and the others landed. He took the lead and flew over. Xian and Jiu Yu looked at each other and immediately understood that he was still thinking about Mu Bing and the others. However, when they landed on the street, they found that it was a large main street. There were no less than 1,000 stone houses on both sides. There was no way to find where Mu Bing and the others lived. He couldn't possibly interrogate them one by one, right? It would be impolite to use their divine sense to investigate. This was the netherworld. Who knew who lived in the houses on both sides? Yu Qianqiu thought about it and decided to ask Ding Xiang for help. He had already rejected Songyun Xian's request to ask the people from the Heartless Palace for help. He said that he had no obligation to do so and Yu Qianqiu could not force him. Therefore the three of them directly returned to the place where they came from. They broke into a house on the side and asked a disciple of the hidden dragon villa where Ding Xiang was. The disciple knew that they were guests brought by Elder Ding, so he led them to Ding Xiang's residence. However, before they entered the door, they saw a large group of people in the sky. They landed on the roofs on both sides of the street and surrounded the entire street. These people were all dressed in black armor and had swords on their waists. They stared at the people below. Yu Qianqiu had seen the same people at the exit of the netherworld. The army of the dark underworld. A surprised voice was heard. The disciples of the hidden dragon villa came out in shock. They looked at the people surrounding the entire street in shock. Ding Xiang naturally came out in shock too. He was not in the mood to care when he saw Yu Qianqiu and the others standing at the door. He walked to the street and looked around. Finally, he cupped his fists towards a person dressed like a general on the roof and said, "Oh, it's General Lu." He pointed to the people on the roofs and said, "The hidden dragon villa has always strictly followed the rules of the netherworld. What is the meaning of this?" "Elder Ding, something has happened around here recently. I was ordered to investigate all suspicious people. I heard that you brought back 3 strangers. Please hand them over so that I can bring them back for interrogation," General Lu said coldly. Yu Qianqiu and the others looked at each other. He must be referring to the 3 of them. This. Ding Xiang looked at Grey Cloud Xin and the others who happened to be standing beside him. He immediately pointed to the 3 people on the roof and smiled bitterly. "General Lu, you've misunderstood. They are not suspicious. One of them is Great Priest Grey Cloud Xin of Heartless Palace. The other is Sect Master Yu Qianqiu of World Commerce. And the last one is from the River Styx tribe." "How dare you?" General Lu shouted coldly. "Ding Xiang, since when is it your hidden dragon villa's turn to interfere with the army of the dark underworld? It's not up to you to decide whether they are suspicious or not. I will investigate everything. Guards, take the 3 of them away." He pointed at Grey Cloud Xian and the others. Ding Xiang immediately smiled bitterly at the 3 of them and slowly retreated, indicating that there was nothing he could do. A dozen soldiers immediately dashed down from the roofs. They even took out shackles and handcuffs and pressed towards the 3 of them. Yu Qianqiu was speechless as he dug his ears. He wasn't afraid, but he couldn't understand how he could be so unlucky as to encounter a game of soldiers catching thieves the moment he arrived. He didn't know what was going on around him, but strangers were being taken back for interrogation,